Okay, y'all, what it do, what it do? E back in the house with vicious Yoda. I think I fucked that up. Whatever, moving on. Let's see. Camera here, bam. And alright, we are live. Let's see what we got going on here. Snarky Puppy, yeah, you're gonna have to break that down. I don't think I played that game, Propaganda. Can you guys hear me alright? Is the audio good? Let me see. Can you hear Baby Yoda? Let me know. Alright. Let me see, where was I last night? Karen, last night I was working. I got a job at a warehouse, midnight shift. You guys watch Brave New World? Yeah, I've seen a lot of different renditions of that. It's a good shit. I'm more of a 1984 guy. Snarky Puppy. Oh, okay, it's a band. Let me see. 6 synth solos, huh? I'll have to check him out. We might fuck with him a little bit later. So you sent me a video to make my streams run smoother. Neo soul and funk. Okay. Yeah, Karen, I got this job. It's fucking killing me, but you know, got to make that money in this capitalist dystopia in which we find ourselves in. That's the first time I've been working in a minute here. But yeah, I'll check him out. Snarky Puppy. I like the band name. Lingus Solo, you say? Right on. Maybe we'll check it out. I'll try not to listen to too much music on here today, 'cause YouTube's been real anal retentive about that shit. Got my stream taken down a few times already, as I'm sure you guys already know. So I'm gonna try not to fuck up. I was gonna re-upload the Chrono Trigger streams. That's the one they took down. But it's so fucking long. I just downloaded it, but uploading it takes hours on end. So it's kind of a mission. That stream's fucking 5-6 hours long. Let me see. On Insta is where I sent the. Oh, Instagram. All right. Yeah, I'll check it out. Anyway, Right now we got Vaush versus Nico. I'm sure you guys have already seen this vid. I just saw it basically like I think it was like last night when I got back from work, and it tripped me the fuck out. So I thought we'd have a little chat about it. Karen said you worked in a warehouse throwing boxes of coats bigger than you on a conveyor belt for years. Right on, Karen. Man, you must be pretty strong. Because I know last night we had to clear out a whole truck with nothing but 50 pound boxes. 50 pounds. And it was brutal. But, I'm getting my workout in. Let me see. Let's jump into this. And I remember we were watching Vaush on Propaganda's channel. And at that time I was like, maybe he's just like, maybe he's just a little bit pompous. But after seeing this, I don't know, man. I think this guy has, I don't know. I think he's got some other agenda going on. So let's dive into it.
I am an activist and a broadcast journalist, and I've been a surrogate for Tulsi Gabbard, Jill Stein. I was the former acting state director of North Carolina for Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016, and I also started the largest Bernie Sanders organization in the country in 2016. So that's the gist of it.
Nice. All right. Well, I'd say that's pretty good work.
Yeah, you have to break down what a hod carrier is. I'm not familiar with that term, but it sounds fancy.
Yeah. Do you want to present your disagreement with me? I have to warn you. I've had this conversation quite a few times, and it ends poorly with near ubiquitous consistency. So we'll have to see how this goes.
So, I mean, he said he's had this conversation. It always ends poorly, no matter what, no matter who he talks to. So that might be like a personal problem, I think. Sounds like maybe Vaush is doing something a little bit. He might be doing something wrong there if every conversation he has ends poorly. Because usually when you have a conversation with an adult and you're being rational and cool and you're actually interested in what they have to say, usually the conversation plays out. So I don't know. Labor for a masonry company. All right, right on.
This time.
Well, don't worry, because I'm in the same boat, so it's cool. So we'll see how this one goes. But essentially, there have been people reaching out to me. You had a debate with a friend of mine recently, and
it wasn't socialism, was it?
Yeah. And so I didn't get a chance to watch all of it because people were actually suggesting that I debate you because of the disagreement that you have on basically whether or not people should vote for Biden. Is that truly the lesser of two evils here? And so I'm arguing that Biden is not the lesser of two evils, and that it is actually the more progressive stance and productive stance to actually not vote for Biden instead of focusing on down ballot races and activism to challenge whoever happens to win in 2020.
If you don't think that Biden is the lesser of two evils, why wouldn't you vote for Trump?
Why wouldn't I vote Trump? Because I don't support Trump. Sorry about that.
Do you think Trump is the lesser of two evils?
Not necessarily.
Yep, Karen, I'm pretty sure I remember saw watching this guy on Propaganda's channel. I think he was debating someone else at that time. And if you haven't seen this, Karen, you are in for a treat. Because I'm sure you're familiar with Nico House. I like him. I'm not a Nico fanboy or anything. I'm trying to approach this as, unbiased as possible and trying to be rational. But, let's see what these guys have to say.
So you think they're
almost there? No, I don't think they're exactly as bad, but I think that Biden's presidency could be marginally worse for a plethora of reasons. I mean, basically, your debate.
I'm sorry, right off the bat, Vaush is like, oh, if you think that Biden is isn't the lesser of two evils, why wouldn't you vote for Trump? What kind of fucking question is that? You know, like, why would he just assume that you have to vote for either one of these monsters? I genuinely just don't get it, unless he's just being like a bad faith actor, or maybe he like genuinely believes that like Nico's like a Trump supporter, which is insane. But I don't know. Yeah, I used to have a little more respect for Vaush too. I thought he was like a little more rational, but I don't know. I saw this video and I don't know, kind of made me look at him a little bit different.
Debating should I vote for? Yeah, I'm popular today. Sorry about that. But basically, you're debating, should I vote for neo-fascism or civility fascism? And the only difference is with neo-fascism, at least we know it exists, because, well, when we're looking at Trump, he's about as loud as he can possibly be. He telegraphs all his plays. And so the things that have been happening under Obama, we actually have attention brought to it under Trump. Whereas with civility fascism, which is what we saw with the Obama administration and what Joe Biden has engaged in really since the existence of his entire career, is when you are pushing for fascism, you have supported fascism, but because of what the left, or at least Democrats, may perceive as the lesser of two evils or the greater good at the time, people tell you not to talk about it, not to discuss it, so it never gets addressed.
Oh, you're talking about Nico? You used to like Nico? Yeah, I mean, I still don't mind Nico. Like, I feel like Nico's heart is in the right place, and that's pretty much all I can ask, is that people are honest, you know, and that they actually say what they believe, even if what they believe is wrong, even if they're not completely informed on a subject. Just be honest, you know, and just try to be a good person. That's all I can really ask. So yeah, you know, I don't hate Nico, and I don't really even dislike him. You know, I think he's okay. I think he's trying his best. I don't agree with him 100%, and he probably likes Tulsi a little more than I do now. But what Nico's point is what Trump is doing is pretty much just an in-your-face, you know, a loud, pompous form of fascism or authoritarianism. To me, they're very similar. I think the people who kind of pick at the differences between those things, it's like you're splitting hairs. And he prefers Trump's version of that to Biden's, you know, which is understandable, because Trump's America really isn't that different from Obama's. Just under Obama's America, the media was super kind to him and super forgiving when he was starting wars and locking up people. Whereas when Trump does it, you know, they call attention to it. So that's what he's calling civility fascism, which, you know, maybe he shouldn't use that term fascism, but I get what he's saying, you know. That he's just trying to get across a point, which I think is pretty easy to convey. And Vaush is, I don't know, he's kind of, you'll see what he does. He doesn't accept what Nico's saying, and he's gonna play obtuse to extremely bizarre degree.
And it becomes a cyclical issue.
What is civility fascism?
So, for example, despite his son being, dying of cancer, Joe Biden immediately after his son died used his leverage as vice president to threaten countries around the world for considering lowering their cancer drug costs.
That's neoliberalism.
And he threatened them with sanctions. No. Using your authority and using the fear of sanctions, because we all know that there's no such thing as targeted sanctions. Sanctions harm the poorest people of any given nation. If any, in understanding the world's, understanding our influence on the world as the biggest and the most fierce hegemony in the country, in the world, then you're of course you're going to abide by whatever Joe Biden as the vice president of the United States with that type of executive power.
I agree.
So already, Vaush's position is that he has to defend Biden, which I don't envy anyone for. But if you're gonna do it, you know, do it like a man, and just go for it. Don't bitch out on the debate and try to think of ways to get around defending Biden just because he's indefensible, which is exactly what Vaush is going to do right now.
That's bad.
But that's just the soft power that that neo-imperialist capitalist countries use. That's not necessarily fascism. You could conceivably have a social democracy that engages in the exact same behavior. Doesn't mean it's good. I'm not defending it. Just fascism.
No. But you're talking about a decision that was almost made unilaterally by Joe Biden as an executive. And using fear in order to make a decision like that could affect
Joe Biden
millions
has
of
never
people.
been the leader of the executive branch, and even if he was,
He is an executive.
Even if he was the president, that wouldn't make it fascism. It's the right of the president.
What definition?
So now they're bickering over the definition of fascism instead of talking about, Biden or what the debate was originally supposed to be about. So everything's going according to Vaush's master plan.
Are you using? No. Okay, so that's an authoritarian argument. Authoritarians can make the argument all day that they have the legal authority to do whatever the hell they want. It does not make them less authoritarian. But authoritarianism is usually inherent in fascism.
Yeah, but authoritarianism is inherent in any system that has a president. Anytime we submit ourselves to the will of a state, we're necessarily submitting ourselves to an authoritarian system. One of the issues that I have with Bernie or Buster
that doesn't really change anything I just said, though. That doesn't really address anything.
One of the issues
I'm glad you have your own.
Wait, my dude, I just let you go on. It's not my philosophical definition; it's the definition of fascism.
Okay, so Vaush has a different definition of fascism, which he claims to be the definition of fascism. So I'm gonna let him ramble on a little bit. Then I guess we'll all find the real definition of fascism and see if Biden qualifies under that. We'll do it together.
So I let you go off for a bit. Hold on.
What is it? What are you defining as? No. What are you defining as fascism? Because you didn't say the definition of fascism. What is the definition you're presenting as fascism?
One of the big issues that I have with Bernie or Busters is I feel they're categorically incapable of differentiating between liberalism and fascism. The reason this bothers me is because this is the exact same mistake that the communists made in Germany before the takeover of the Nazis. They were unable to differentiate between the social democrats, who they labeled as social fascists, because fundamentally liberalism leads to fascism, and I agree with that for the most part, and the actual open fascists at the time. And their mistake, along with some other tactical decisions they made at the time that ended up backfiring.
Yeah, liberalism leading to fascism, I don't know how true that is. I know there are lots of roads to fascism. I know you can have a conservative state that leads to fascism. You can have a totalitarian state that leads to fascism pretty easy. And I'm sure I can imagine a progressive or a socialist state that leads to fascism. I don't think it's exclusively a liberal fucking thing. So, whatever, Vaush.
Enabled the rise of the Third Reich. So I'm very critical of people who will call people like Joe Biden a fascist when what he really is
what do you define as fascism?
I generally go by Umberto Eco's 14 points.
So he goes by Umberto Eco's 14 points. I don't know if you'll find Umberto Eco's 14 points in the dictionary if you look up fascism. Matter of fact, I'm fairly certain you won't. But Vaush has to have his fancy definition so he can just allow that over the peons who he pretends to be smarter than. It's too much work for him to just go, type in fascism in fucking Google and use that definition. That's too easy and inconvenient for him. He has to use Umberto Eco's 13 points, whatever the fuck that is.
Okay. Can you summarize them?
I mean, we can go through them. I don't think this is very material to the argument. We can argue the difference.
No, it's not really material to the argument.
No, because you said
probably the first honest thing he said.
Because you said the whole point of the whole critique is, you can't define between liberalism and true fascism, and you said this is the definition of fascism.
What's your definition?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much giving Nico no choice. But to be like, okay, dude, what's your definition of fascism? Since you want to make a whole big thing of it, Vaush. So, which I think is fair.
To predicate our entire argument. Well, no, you're the one who said that your definition was the definition of fascism. We're on your channel, and so I'm trying to get.
You opened this by saying Joe Biden was a fascist for levying sanctions.
And I get that, but you didn't accept my presentation. So now I'm trying to ask you, what do you consider to be the definition of fascism? Because you put that burden there. If you want to adhere to that,
I'm happy to talk about that.
You said that's the definition. I just wanted to quick summary.
I'm very interested in your definition first because I don't think you know what fascism means. So I want you to attempt to define it to me before I give you the actual definition that I use.
Well, no, I'm not gonna. I'm going to.
Yeah, propaganda, and later on in the video, Nico tries to, explain to Vaush that those 13 points do describe Biden, but I don't think Vaush doesn't really let him get a word in on that. But my point is that Nico didn't even have to do that. He could have just been like, "Fuck your definition." I'm better at those 13 points or whatever that he learned in his fancy college or some shit. You can just look in the dictionary, just use that definition. It's completely fine, and I don't see how Vaush can just dismiss it. And all those points apply to Biden as well. So, yeah, we'll see how it plays out, guys.
Let you define fascism because I just explained to you why I thought Joe Biden was a fascist, and you said that is not the definition of fascism. So I'm curious.
What is your definition?
The definition of fascism is.
What is your definition of fascism?
I already gave you what I believe to be fascistic examples of Joe Biden's nonsensical behavior as an authoritarian fascist asshole. If you don't want to define fascism, then why would you then put the burden out there to make me adhere to some definition of fascism that you don't want to adhere to?
So when a president uses unilateral action, that is fascism?
That's not defined. Why are you asking me if you have the definition?
Unilateral action to do something that hurts other people?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Then I'm
we can go back and forth all day, or you can.
So at this point, it's like Vaush obviously isn't interested in debating or having any sort of discourse. Right now, Vaush's number one concern is making Nico look as stupid and uneducated as possible. And it's pretty petulant to me, in my opinion, but, whatever. That's his strategy for getting around defending Biden, who's utterly indefensible.
There's nothing to struggle about, Vaush. Just answer what you consider to be the
Sure, I can read off the 14 points if you want, but I know how the conversation is going to go from this point.
That way we have a whole
just wait.
What do you mean?
Just so you know, wait. Just so you know, your unwillingness to define fascism when you open by making the argument that Joe Biden is a fascist plays very poorly to my perception of your understanding of this issue. It makes you look like you have no idea what you're talking about.
But your perception of my understanding is irrelevant to me. Your perception of definitions of words are relevant to me for the sake of this debate. So can you introduce the definition? Because I was actually going to define what I believed to be the definition of fascism, but then you put the burden on yourself
to say that my description. Childish. Sure, okay, then.
Oh God! So yeah, now Vaush is doing what we call projecting. I don't know, just in general, he's projecting what he's doing onto Nico, being very petulant and childish, and quarreling about definitions instead of just sticking to a simple topic.
And give me 3 minutes and I'll read it out loud. Okay, this is literally I was going to tell you, but then you made me mad. We can have a foundation
to operate from.
Wait, but I'm looking for your... We can
literally just have... No. If I read this to you... definition.
If I read this to you, will you even understand what I'm arguing?
Low blow, dude. Will you even understand what I'm arguing if I read this? I mean, I know your brain is the size of a fucking acorn, so, I mean, do you even understand the English words and shit? Like were we in 7th grade, bro? Nico comes up to you and tries to have a discourse about Biden, and you're dancing around it, bitching and quarreling about definitions, calling him stupid in so many words, and he's the child here. Okay.
Let's give it a shot.
Okay, hold on. Double back. Vaush, did I insult you? Have I insulted your intelligence at all?
I don't think I've done anything stupid yet, whereas you have.
So it's okay that Vaush started insulting Nico because Vaush hasn't done anything stupid in Vaush's own opinion. So it's okay that he's insulting his intelligence. You know, it's totally permissible. But what's not permissible is that Nico doesn't have the Umberto Eco's 13 points stapled to his fucking brain. You know, that's unexcusable.
So I think it's warranted.
No, I can't vouch. Trust me, Mr. Anarcho-Bidenist.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, there's one of us who doesn't know the definition of words, and it isn't me. So
What word
if
do I
you
not
want
know
to
the
have a
definition of?
genuine discussion,
Wait, what word do I
if you
not
want
know
to
the
have a
definition of?
genuine discussion and debate about whether or not Biden is lesser of two
You say
evils,
so much dumb shit, but you don't even
Trump is
address it.
lesser
You
of
just
two
keep
evils.
talking over me.
No.
Are you a troll?
If you want to have a genuine discussion, Vaush, then we can have a genuine discussion. Or we can gaslight each other and go back and forth.
So what's going to happen after I share the definition?
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening. Nico kind of nailed that one. Vaush appears to be gaslighting Nico. Just making him think that he's crazy and that he's not making sense and that he's being the childish petulant one, when in actuality, Vaush is doing all of that shit. Gaslighting in the most classical sense. It's really amazing to see. I really didn't think that this guy was such a scumbag to this level. Like, I know people have disagreements, but the way he's handling it is like that of a fucking middle schooler.
Definition that I use, one that's been available for
then
70 years.
Then we're gonna have a debate. Just give me the definition.
Okay, so you realize the
Now you
definition
have to adhere to this definition.
you realize the definition I'm going to provide doesn't describe Joe Biden as a fascist in the way that you did. So after I read this out loud, I want you to explain to me what your definition of fascism is, and then we can resolve the contradiction in our respective positions.
Read the damn definition, bro.
Are you going to wait, can you not even commit to that?
I'm going to commit to whatever position is best for me to commit to based on the definition you give.
Didn't
That's
know
how
what
debate
fascism
works.
was coming into this. You had no idea.
I didn't know what
You thought it meant authoritarian.
Okay,
you actually didn't know.
No, that's not what I said. So you nice try, but just define fascism. I don't know why we're having a 30-minute discussion.
Sure. Okay.
If it's right there.
All right. If this is good.
That hard.
So the
All right, drum roll. He's finally able and willing to list off his 13 definitions of fascism. It took like, I don't know, like we're 11 minutes in, so it was probably like a good solid 8-10 minutes of him just beating around the bush on that. But he's finally ready to continue with this shit instead of calling Nico an idiot. Praise the fucking Lord.
first point is the cult of tradition. The second point is the rejection of modernism. The third point is the cult of action for action's sake. The fourth point is disagreement is treason. The fifth point is fear of difference. The sixth point is appeal to social frustration. The seventh point is the obsession with a plot. The eighth point is the enemy is both strong and weak. Is there something funny?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Biden. You know, he's always going off on Trump, like he's like the biggest threat to America. Like, oh, he's so strong, but he's weak though because he can't keep his supporters in line, and that sort of shit. That's just one definition that I think applies to him. All that capitalizing on the social frustrations and all that shit. It all sounds like Biden to me. Maybe not to like a T, but you know, I think it's largely there. And if you use the classic definition of fascism, which we'll go over in a second, I think, yeah, it's basically Biden, especially when he was vice president and had more authority over the country, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're literally reading off. So
yeah, wait, that's what you asked me to do.
No, and I'm actually very happy that you decided to do that.
You literally, you begged me to do this.
I figured you were going to help substantiate my point, and that's why I'm laughing. Because if we just look at several of those points, just right off the bat, just basic analysis.
Yeah, wait, we can have it. Wait. We're not done. We're not even done with the definition.
Oh, okay.
Also, wait, why are you you couldn't even provide a definition of fascism. You're in no position to laugh.
I could.
Well, you could. I could. Yeah, like your girlfriend.
How dare you laugh at a white man? You ignorant boy. You couldn't even provide a definition of fascism. You fool. Yeah, how dare you, Nico? What's wrong with you, man? When a white man is talking, you shut the fuck up and you listen. Damn it.
Friend who goes to a different school who no one's ever seen. Yeah, your definition of fascism who goes to a different school district. Come on, dude.
Trust me, bro. Let's not talk about girlfriends. First of all, it's my wife. Second of all,
wait.
And this is when things just get weird.
Wait. We're not talking about
to compare.
Excuse me?
We're not going to compare each other's love lives because Pamela, I understand you've been engaged to Pamela for quite some time, but
what the fuck are you talking about right now?
Yeah, exactly.
No, wait, no, actually, what the fuck are you talking about right now?
I'm talking about Pamela. You're not familiar with Pamela Henderson? I thought that y'all have been together for a long time.
Burn, Pamela Henderson. So yeah, we're back in middle school.
Wait, did you think that my argument had anything to do with our girlfriends and that I wasn't making an analogy?
Are we going to actually
why is every conversation with people like you the same? You actually can't engage in conversation.
People like you? What you mean people? Vaush, you started talking about girls from other schools, bro.
Yeah, as an example of how you can't provide a definition of fascism while claiming to have one. You actually can't understand analogies.
Okay, and? Oh, I can't. That's an analogy. Oh, now you're changing the definition of analogies too.
Yes,
right. So anyway,
it's an analogy.
So continue. That was a horrid analogy. Just go ahead and continue. Finish your definition so you can finish get roasted. Come on, continue.
So yeah, at the very least, Nico just wants to move this thing along, which Vaush doesn't, because the quicker we move things along, the quicker he'll have to actually defend Joe Biden, and we all know why he doesn't want to do that.
It's actually extraordinary to me that every time I have this conversation...
Continue, Vaush. Just continue with the damn conversation. This is what I'm doing without moderators because
why are you patronizing?
I'm going to need you to read the definition so we can have a discussion about politics. Okay. I'm not getting into this. So
I'm going to mute you.
I respect that. Nico wants to have a discussion about politics. I don't know.
You for a second, because I'm actually trying.
Better things to do.
Okay, wait. Do you just want to go?
Read the definition.
Wait. Do you just want to go?
Read the definition.
Wait. So you realize that in a conversation, you need to establish the terms of conversation. I have actually had debates with Nazis who are more rational than you.
15. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
And
hold on, I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you for a hot second. Okay, so I'm just going to try to explain this to you. Okay, so.
So now Vaush has banished Nico. He's banished him to the silent realm, where he can speak no more, speak no further. Because Vaush is, I guess Vaush is moderating this debate. I don't think that's how debates should work or usually work, but I mean it's working for him, so he's got no complaints. So I guess that's all that matters.
So far, you have been insanely fucking hostile, and also you're not even engaging with the things that I say. You're running down a dialogue tree. We haven't even begun to discuss the actual issue, like the thing you came on here to discuss. We haven't even started talking about yet. And
I don't know. I think some of that blame might land squarely on your shoulders, Vaush. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I think you might be to blame there.
Now, I can read this out loud to you. And after I'm done with that, I want you to provide me your definition of fascism, and then we will see which one of these two candidates we have for potential presidents in 2020 better adheres to our respective definitions.
They both do. What the fuck?
But I know why you're avoiding sharing your definition with me, and I don't think it's rude of me to be irritated that you would make arguments that you know are wrong and then walk back from them without ever acknowledging you didn't know what you were talking about.
So, I guess what Vaush is saying is this whole conversation could have gone way differently if Nico had just, scraped and bowed to Vaush and just admitted that he didn't know the definition of fascism and that he was an idiot and that he was completely retarded and shouldn't have never even graduated high school. That he should have just stayed in kindergarten all his life. That's what Vaush wants to hear. I guess maybe he can't, get his rocks off otherwise. I don't really understand why Vaush needs to hear these things. Why he just can't, debate the fucking topic at hand. But, it helps Vaush, I guess, to to know that people know how stupid they are and to admit it. And that's the only way he can, continue a debate, which is a really fucked up and unproductive way of, discussing anything with anyone.
I'm willing to defend anything I say in this discussion, but we have to arrive at the discussion before we can even engage in those defenses. Okay? You're unmuted, so I'm going to...
Oh, how gracious. Vaush, the god of everything smart, has unbanished Nico from the muted verse.
Finish this.
Okay, so now I'm gonna...
All right, calm down, Carrie. Don't get too angry. He's just he's just ignorant, or a sociopath. Either way, it's probably not his fault. He probably did get fucked up a lot when he was a kid.
I'm just gonna go on your little diatribe, and I'm gonna finish what I have to say, and then you can go on to your definitions. First of all, Vaush, nobody's backed down from anything. I laughed, and you asked me why I laughed, because as you're providing me definitions, just a few that you've rattled off from your 14 points, I'm laughing
you asked me
because
to do.
I could go on it. Do you want to let me finish talking or not?
Are you
no
actually accusing me of interrupting you?
Okay, Vaush, are you going to let me finish discussing or not?
I'm just going to go back to muting you. So I'll finish reading these.
Back to the muted verse you go. So saith I, Vaush, the immaculate, the impenetrable.
And then you can talk. So, point 9 is pacifism is tracking with the enemy. Then we have contempt for the weak. Then we have everybody is educated to become a hero. We have machismo and weaponry, selective populism, and then Urafascism makes newspeak. Now, obviously, these are just the titles. I don't know if you would be patient enough to allow me to read the descriptions of any of them, but we can talk about them point by point. Before we get to that, though, I would like you to either A, give me a definition of fascism you were using, or B, acknowledge you didn't have one and you thought fascism meant authoritarianism. Okay? So I'm going to unmute you. Wait. I'm going to unmute you, and then I want you to do one of those two things.
Okay, so good news. Vaush, the merciful, is about to unmute Nico. He's coming back to the realm of facts and logic, a realm governed by Lord Vaush. So I hope Nico, just appreciates what Vaush is doing for him. Hopefully he hangs his head in shame that he ever even thought of defying Vaush's perfect logic. Let's see if Nico learned anything, guys.
Okay, so let me be very clear about something. You don't dictate how I decide to engage in discourse. So there's one.
Wait, I absolutely do. Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely does. How dare you, Nico? How the fuck dare you disrespect this intelligent, beautiful man? All right, interrupting him when he talks, not accepting his version of fascism. What the fuck is wrong with you? All right. When Vaush speaks, you shut the fuck up. You listen. And you swallow that shit, all right? And when it comes out, you dig in the toilet, you swoop that shit up, and you eat it again. And you fucking thank Vaush for the opportunity, buddy.
Yeah, if you're dodging every question, I do.
No. First of all, I haven't dodged any questions. Second of all, you never let me finish answering the first question, which I'm still trying to answer, and I've been trying to answer for the last 10 minutes. So first, I will address your original rebuttal, which was nothing that I had said at that point about Joe Biden adhered to the definition, quote unquote, the definition of fascism. Based off of what you provided, that is ridiculous.
What is your definition of fascism?
That is utterly ridiculous.
So you're not going to
No. First of all, I'm going to give my definition of fascism as soon as I address everything that I said and then everything that you just said. Then I will define why I decided to use those examples.
How long do you expect that will take?
Oh, sweet baby Jesus. I don't know, Vaush. I'm on your time. What's up, man? What do you need from me?
I don't know, man. Nico, he sounds like he's just trying to get through the goddamn debate. Like he's trying to figure this thing out. He just wants to talk about Biden and relevant things. But Vaush, I swear to God, it looks like he's trying to be the most petulant fucking baby on the planet right now. Maybe it's just me.
Ideally, you could provide your definitions immediately.
You appoint me comedy god? Oh, you guys are too kind. Got 2 whole votes for comedy god here. I'll treasure them always.
Listen, Vaush, it took you 30 minutes for me to convince you to provide a definition that you put the burden to provide.
I put the burden on you.
You're the one who said that Yeah,
we're never going to discuss the actual issue
definition.
Here. Yeah, hold on.
Clearly, your intention was never really to discuss the issue.
Do you have any final words for the stream? We're literally 20 minutes in, and I actually can't talk about this.
So in other words, hold on. So you realize that you couldn't actually debate me on Joe Biden.
You can't. Wait, we can't even get to the debate.
Time, right?
Yep, Nico got it down. He can't debate you on Joe Biden, and he just wanted to gaslight you. I can't really put it any better than you just
can't
did.
Even get there.
Yeah, you're right.
You were so polite on Twitter. What happened?
You are.
Yes, you are the ones who count, Karen. Really, truly, your opinions are the only ones who count. Now I mean that too. I love you guys.
Trust me, Vaush, you haven't seen Not Polite yet. I'm still in polite.
What is this, like, trying to e-gangster? What the fuck are you talking about? I'm just trying to talk with you about my ideas. Why are you acting like this?
Yeah, whoa, Nico, where's all this coming from, buddy? He wants to talk to you about ideas and philosophize and, just share intellect. And you're just coming at him like this, like a crip-ass gangster blood or something? Like... Man, you just take a chill pill, Nico, for the love of God.
There. E-gangster?
Yeah. Like keyboard warrior? Yeah.
Keyboard warrior?
Yeah.
Vaush, really?
Yeah.
Are you didn't have a lot of friends.
Wait, you're not even responding. You're not responding to anything I say.
You didn't have a lot of friends in high school, did you, Vaush?
What the fuck are you going on about?
You didn't have a lot of friends in high school. You didn't have a lot of friends in high school, did you? If you think that this is being rude, you're really sensitive, man.
I actually can't believe somebody like you engages in IRL activism. It's insane to me.
I bet you can.
Can I ask you an honest question? What was your perception of me before you came here? Because I have trouble imagining you're generally this stupid, and this is something you're reserving because you think you should be antagonistic.
I'm generally, well, if you believe I'm generally stupid.
No, I literally...
I don't know, man. I think the antagonism was started from Vaush's side. I didn't see Nico stepping to this asshole all disrespectful. And Vaush admitted it. He admitted that he was allowed to treat Nico like shit and call him stupid because Vaush hadn't done anything stupid yet. So he admitted that he started being antagonistic earlier, but now he's the one walking back on it.
I literally just said you're not. Wait. I literally just said I don't think you're generally this stupid.
This conversation is stupid.
Yeah, this conversation has been insanely stupid.
I mean, you haven't.
Yeah, it has been, and that's kind of your bad on that. But all right, let's dig into this. Let's find out what the internet's definition of fascism is, and see if any of this applies to Biden or if it ever did. Let me see. Fascism. Go to good old Merriam-Webster. Good Lord. See what she has to say. Fascism, often capitalized, a political philosophy, movement, or regime, such as that of the fascisti, that exalts nation and often race above the individual, that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. So I think at the very least that last little tidbit there, the forcible suppression of opposition, that definitely applies to Biden. He voted for the Iraq war to suppress his opposition in Iraq. He wrote the crime bill to suppress his opposition in the streets, to arrest drug dealers and gang members he didn't like, and he did it forcibly, in the most forcible way that he could. And the second definition is a tendency towards or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control. So he was vice president during Obama's little reign, if you want to call it that. And I'd say all the executive orders and such that Obama passed, like what was it? Did Obama sign the Patriot Act, or was that Bush? Well, anyway, Obama did bring us up from like 3 wars to 7 and shit. And Biden was cool with all that. He was the Emperor Palpatine behind Obama Vader. Okay, so it seems a little fascistic to me. But at the end of the day, we're splitting hairs. And whether Biden is a fascist or not, I don't think that's the real argument we should be having. It's whether he's fit to be president and whether he has the country's best ideals in mind. I think that's a little more important. I think that's the real conversation we should be having. And I think the answer is obvious, no. And I think just because you think Trump is worse, I don't think that's any excuse to give Biden a pass. I think that's silly and stupid. And let me see. Propaganda said Obama signed the NDAA. So, I mean, there you go. We can look up all that shit, too. The National Defense Authorization Act. The name for each of a series of United States federal laws specifying the annual budget and expenditures of the U.S. Department of Defense. So, I mean, there you go. He put in a bunch of money that could have been better spent elsewhere, probably for social programs, and he put it in the war, as the Democrats are prone to do. So, fascistic, like, whatever. He's an asshole, and he obviously doesn't have the country's best ideas in mind. He's done nothing but shit on the black community, fought for segregation and, different buses for different colored kids. So he's an asshole, and he's tried to cut welfare over and over and over and over again. And had these two individuals been able to debate properly and not like children, we probably would have got that far in the debate, and they probably would have mentioned that at least once. But we didn't get that far. We got to them, getting your mama and your girlfriend jokes out. So whatever. Hey, Tony watches closely. What's cracking, G? Oh, and Anthony Reyes is here. I didn't even fucking realize that. The chat's going at a mile a minute here. See, fascist in Italian means binding the unity of the state. Oh, that's what fascisti means? Neat. So I was gonna watch, I was gonna wait for my cousin to get back to do this vid, but he hasn't gotten back yet. He said he might bring weed, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up because he'll devastate me if he doesn't bring any. So we'll see. So we'll move on. Biden calls for Breonna Taylor's arrest. Huh. And it's a little bizarre to me because in case you guys haven't heard, Breonna Taylor's kind of 6 feet deep right about now. But I don't know. Maybe Biden's got some super non-Alzheimer reason for stating such a thing. Let me see.
Last week, your running mate, Senator Harris, said that the officer who shot Jacob Blake, based on what she has seen, should be charged. Do you agree with her, and do you also believe the same for the officers who were involved in the death of Breonna Taylor?
I think we should let the judicial system work its way. I do think there's a minimum need to be charged, the officers, and as well as Breonna Taylor. And I might add, by the way, I think what happened in Portland, where one of the Trump guys riding along in
All right, so there you go. There's Ramblin' Biden, and I'm laughing right now because the lady doing sign language had to translate all that in sign language. So she had to literally be like, "Yeah, I think the officers should be charged, and Breonna Taylor as well." So I can only imagine what the deaf people were thinking. Like, did she just fuck up? Or I don't know. Maybe she covered for him and just she just conveyed just the officers need to be arrested. I don't even know how she'd say Breonna Taylor in hand language. I don't fucking know. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny she had to translate that gibberish, that fucking nonsense and blithering idiocy. So, I mean, do I really think that this piece of shit wants Breonna Taylor's ghost to be arrested for God knows what? And I can't imagine he did that on purpose. It was probably just a gaffe. He probably just his brain is probably just melting from decades of secret cocaine and meth and heroin use. And I think it's all just catching up to his stupid racist ass. And, I totally dig that he's genuinely probably a racist deep down, but I don't think he meant to say that retarded shit. But I just think it's hilarious that he said it, and Homegirl had to translate it.
This is unreal. So if you recall correctly, Breonna Taylor, she was an EMT, she's a medic, and she was sleeping in her boyfriend's home when police, who had a no-knock warrant...
Nope. She's a criminal, and her corpse needs to be arrested. We need to dig her up, handcuff her, bring her right to Biden. He'll know what to do with her. Alright? That's what needs to go down, Richard Medhurst.
Barged in, 3 of them, if I recall correctly, and they just started unloading. They were in plain clothes, and they got the wrong address to add insult to injury. And her boyfriend, thinking that it was a bunch of burglars, who wouldn't? You see 3 guys in civilian clothes, last thing on your mind is that these people are cops. So, but nonetheless, they killed his girlfriend and then arrested him. They shot her 8 times, man. 8 bullets. And she died in a pool of her blood. And to this day, this happened a few months ago, back in February, if I'm not mistaken. And and the cops who shot her still have...
March 13th, 2020. So I'm not muting myself, so he probably sounds all crazy and shit when I'm playing the video. But yeah, he had a little asterisk there. March 13th, 2020 was her death date. Rest in peace, Breonna. And respect to the family. I know I don't mean to be disrespectful with the jokes and shit. I'm just trying to make light of a really dark situation. We have a really mentally ill man running for president now, and the country's fucked either way. So what can you do but laugh?
Have not been arrested. They're still walking free. And on top of it, as I said, they arrested her boyfriend. Can you believe that? They were in plain clothes. They had a no-knock warrant. They got the wrong address. They killed his girlfriend, and then they arrest him. I mean, how this man is still sane, I have no clue. I don't know what kind of patience this guy has, but props to him. Regardless, what you hear Joe Biden saying here is that Breonna Taylor should be arrested. First of all, she's dead. Yeah, the cops killed her. She passed away. She was murdered. So I don't know how you want to charge her with anything. Now, second of all, you have people, the blue MAGAs, who are coming in and trying to give Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt. And they're doing this in several ways. So they're saying that, oh, well, he misspoke. Clearly, what he meant is the officers involved in Jacob Blake's case should be charged. And as well for Breonna Taylor in the case of Breonna Taylor. So they're saying that he misspoke, and he's just saying that the officers involved in Breonna Taylor's killing should also be arrested. Listen, man, first of all, this guy's running for president. I mean, he's interviewing for the most important job in the country. You don't think he should be a bit more specific in his wording? No?
Yeah, I agree with Richard there. He should definitely be more specific in his wording if he is running for the highest office. It's ridiculous that we even have to deal with this shit. But I mean, do I think he did it on purpose? I think it's highly unlikely that Biden was really gave that deep thought and went, you know what? Time to arrest Breonna Taylor. She's a menace and she needs to just be taken in, for the good of society. And I doubt that's what would crack. But Richard has a slightly less forgiving opinion.
Is this such a callous, unimportant, trivial issue that he rushes through it? Why is it upon the general public to interpret what he was trying to say? Also, just to disprove that, Joe Biden did not misspeak. He said it twice. You just weren't paying attention. What did he say, first of all? What is the first thing that comes out of his mouth when he's answering the question? He says, I think the judicial system should work its way. What does that mean? Especially coming from somebody who wrote the 94 crime bill, who pushed the war on drugs. What does that mean? That means he's totally fine with her boyfriend being charged with attempted murder on police when they barged into his own home. And if you haven't been paying attention, look at what came out just this week. The Associated Press reports that a plea deal was offered to Breonna Taylor's boyfriend in exchange for linking her to a drug ring.
So here we go. same old story. Whenever the cops do this, whenever they fuck up and kill an innocent person, the first thing they have to do is, defame that person's character, find out the worst things they've ever done in their lives, and bring that to light to justify their death. And to varying degrees, it's worked in the past. I think America's slowly starting to get hipper to that shit now, which I guess is better late than never. But yeah, it's sad. So they're trying to say, well, she might have been selling drugs or something. So I don't know. Maybe they did have the right house. Not how that works, guys.
A lawyer for Breonna Taylor's family said prosecutors offered a plea deal to an accused drug trafficker that would have forced him to implicate Taylor in criminal activity after her killing by police had pushed her name to the forefront of a national reckoning on race. Can you believe that? That's what Joe Biden means when he says, let the judicial system work its way. Oh, he's not kidding. He's not kidding. They're trying to charge her after her own death, after her being murdered. So he did not misspeak. He told you 2 times the same thing. He thinks Breonna Taylor should be charged. You just weren't paying attention. And if he had just said, let the judicial system work its way, just the first part alone, we know what he means.
Yeah, no, again, I think Richard, I respect his opinion, and I think he's a good guy, but I think he's reaching a little bit. Just a little bit, probably. I think he's trying to sensationalize it, but I don't even think he has to. I think the mere fact that Biden said that at all, whether he meant it or not, that's bad enough. But I'm not saying there's zero chance that he could be right, but I think it's highly unlikely that that's what Joe Biden meant in his heart, in that beating thing that he calls a heart,
This is a judicial system that is corrupt, that defends police who murdered unarmed civilians, that defends corrupt chiefs of police and corrupt DAs and corrupt judges and corrupt officers, who upholds this systemic racism, who uses prisoners as slave labor. That's what he means. You're okay with that? You ain't paying attention then. If you're paying attention, you would not be okay with that. You could not be okay with that. You could not possibly be okay with that. The last part of the sentence where he says the officers should be charged, as well as Breonna Taylor, is just him repeating the same thing, but more clearly, so he can really drive home the point. You just ain't paying attention. You obviously don't know this guy's record. You obviously don't know what the judicial system working its way means for you to think that he misspoke. No, he did not misspeak. And honestly, if you are really trying to play devil's advocate with this racist architect of such a disgusting criminal justice system, if you can even call it a justice system, it's a for-profit prison industry. You're really playing devil's advocate with this guy? Are you sure about that? Yeah?
I don't know. It's such a stupid thing to say. I can't imagine that Biden just really held these beliefs in like a genuine manner. But let me see. What else we got here? But yeah, there you go. Biden, completely out of his mind. But vote blue no matter who, guys, because we have to take down Trump no matter what. Doesn't matter how many babies we have to kill. Doesn't matter how many people we have to imprison, or how many wars we have to start to do it. As long as Trump is gone, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Even if all we have to show for it is just a smoldering heap of rock and dirt on the planet we used to call Earth, at least as long as Trump isn't there, then we won. So, yeah. And let me see. And if you guys, at this point, if you want to drop any video links to anything cool that you saw, by all means, go ahead. You all got the wrench. Right now, see what's going on in the Hill.
It's our favorite time of the week again. Time for hashtag Rising Qs when we answer your questions. All right, Sagar, what's up first?
All right, number one, let's throw it up there on the screen. Given the estimate of hidden Trump supporters to be at the high end of 15%, with 11.7% of Republicans, 10.5% of independents being a shy voter, given their lack of enthusiasm, what is the likelihood of voter turnout for them? I think.
That's funny, Tony. I should have got a sticker that said I think I voted in February when I voted for Tulsi and Sema. Yeah, I got the actual sticker that said that I voted affirmatively. You know, like a conformist. But at least I voted for Tulsi and not any of these other clowns, which I was proud of back then. Now I just feel nothing about it. Like the part of me that was all rah rah Tulsi, that part is dead. And there's just like an empty, dying corpse where that part was in my heart.
I think it's a very interesting question. Simple answer, we do not know.
Right.
And acknowledging it is actually probably the best thing that you can do whenever it comes to the shy Trump voter phenomenon. Many of these polls have some humility before making some large declarations about it. And I think we've actually been generally good at looking at larger trends and warnings about if there are going to be problems, where are they going to come from? It's going to be from the fact that Trump is polling higher with Hispanics, much higher than he was last time around, and that he's getting a larger percent of the black vote. It's very possible that if he does win, it will be because of those two things, and possibly depressed turnout in other forms, and possibly even a shy Trump phenomenon.
So the thing that you can look at to see what is going on and if there's a large or significant shy Trump voter effect is if you compare the live polls where someone actually calls you and asks you who you're supporting versus the online or automated polls. Because in theory, if you're shy about admitting to a human being that you support Donald Trump, you may be more likely to do it anonymously online. That's kind of the theory. So what a lot of pollsters and analysts look at is if there's a big divergence between those live polls and the results that they're seeing and the online polls. And what we've seen is kind of a mixed bag. In general, there has been a small effect where the online polls are slightly better for Trump, or at least that was the case the last time that I looked into this. So I think it could be a real phenomenon at the margins.
Yes.
But you have to have the polls be a little bit closer than they are right now.
Totally agree. All right.
All right, next up, the primary shows.
Yeah, so I guess they're talking about secret Trump voters. People that are voting for Trump, but too embarrassed to admit that they're going to do that. Which, I guess they said let me rewind that. So it's a 15 to 11% or some shit. I don't know. I don't really care. What I do know is right now I'm calling it for Trump. Unfortunately, that brings me no joy to say that, but I don't know. I don't see Biden squeaking out a win here. But honestly, I think it's still pretty close. But if I was like, a gambling man, if I had to place a bet, I would probably just go Trump right about now.
To have the polls be a little bit closer than they are right now.
Totally agree. All right.
All right, next up, the primary showed that the biggest impediment to progressive policies within the Democratic Party is older voters. What do you think progressives can and should do to reach these voters? And I'm actually going to borrow an answer from Kyle Kulinski. He always makes this point. Like, one of the things that the Bernie Sanders campaign did, and Bernie himself did, is he painted his policies as...
Let me see. I'll get to your question your comment in a sec, Tony. But I'm gonna read this real. The primary showed that the biggest impediment to progressive policies within the Democratic Party is older voters. What do you think progressives should do to reach these voters? I think that's a good question, actually, because my cousin. It was funny. This morning he comes he comes home from his uncle's house, not my uncle, and it's not his blood uncle. He just calls him his uncle. And this dude is like 77 years old, and he's a big CNN fan. And I didn't think people like that existed, but they're real, dude. And he takes like CNN as the goddamn gospel. And it really is like people like him that kind of have been shitting on the progressive movement this whole time. And without giving too much information, this guy's like a real piece of work. My cousin showed him that clip of Biden calling for Breonna Taylor's arrest, and his uncle's response was it was classic. His uncle's response was, "Oh, that's just the Russians. That's just the Russians mixing up the audio to make it look like he said that." And my cousin was like dumbfounded. So he's like, "Unc, you really want me to disbelieve my lying eyes, my lying ears. Is that what you're saying now? So there are people like that out there. Just you can't get through to them. They're real, and it's tragic. But yeah, Tony watches closely. Says Vicious E, she let many of us down, but we knew it would come to that after how she was blacklisted on everything and trashed by the DNC. Tulsi was blacklisted. She should have made the debate. She should have made all the debates, in my opinion. She only made like a handful, and it was really tragic and just sad to see how they just shit on her. But at the end of the day, Tulsi definitely could have ran a better race. She could have been a lot more aggressive in the debates. She could have, instead of just going after Kamala, which was great, and we all appreciated and loved that moment. But she could have gone after Biden way, way harder. She could have gone after a lot of the candidates way more aggressively than she did. Excuse me. So, yeah, some of it's on the DNC, a little bit's on her too. I'd say most of it's on the DNC, but there's definitely a burden that Tulsi's going to shoulder for the rest of her life. And I hope she sees how she fucks up. So maybe the next time she runs, she doesn't make those same mistakes. That'd be just swell.
As like radical, as like a
Prop. We'll check out that video in a sec, man.
revolution. And older voters who, are more sort of Cold War fearful and looking more for stability, that was not a
butt plug
message that landed with them.
Yeah.
When in reality, healthcare for all is not a radical idea. It's a mainstream idea. It's an idea that's supported by a large proportion of the public. $15 minimum wage, union rights, Green New Deal even, if you frame it in the idea of creating new jobs for people. These are not radical ideas. You don't have to frame them that way. In fact, a lot of them are in the mainstream of America. So I think grounding it in that language and also in a language of American tradition, which is something Harvey K always talks about here, rather than being like, let's do what Europe's doing, being like, no, let's do what FDR did. Let's harken back to these American traditions. I think that will go a lot further to winning over older voters.
I couldn't agree more. I still think the best Bernie ad of all time was the Bernie ad of the America ad from 2016.
Oh, it's so good.
All about being American. That's something that I think a lot of leftists have problems with being even patriotic. And frankly, if they did it more, I think they could win a lot more of those voters. Okay, last question here. Is there a scenario where progressives are actually better off if the Democrats lose again in 2020? Will moderate electability finally be?
And that's actually a good point. Not what they're saying. What Tony just wrote down. She won't leave the Democratic Party though. That's a strike against her. I think that's actually a pretty underrated point because look who we have as the nominees now. We've got Trump versus Biden. If Tulsi ran third party, she could have done phenomenally. If Jesse was running, he'd be doing phenomenally right now. And the reason I think they're not running is because they don't want the heat on them of the media saying, "Oh, you're taking votes away from Biden. You're taking votes away from the Democrats." That bullshit, which is a pretty sad and fucked up and abject reason not to run against these monsters. So I'm holding them accountable. If Jesse doesn't jump in, even though it's a little late. He hasn't even been able to campaign like Biden and Trump have been doing. He's not getting his face out there. So even if he did run, I don't know how well he'd do. But if he had done it, I think he'd be in a great position right now because both these guys are hated. So and if Tulsi ran, Green Party, she would have been doing phenomenally right about now against these two clowns. So I don't know, man. They're lost. That's what I think. Yeah, only 8 watching. Just remember to hit that like, man. 'Cause that shit helps, or so they say. Let me see.
Hey, Dad, question for you, Crystal. I don't know.
All right, let me say, yes, there is a scenario where progressives are better off if they lose again, if Democrats lose again in 2020. But it's not something, like, I always get...
It's not a given.
No, it's not a given. And in fact, there's this theory out there that, okay, if Democrats lose again, then they're going to see the error of their ways and realize that they should have embraced things like Medicare for all, some of the progressive priorities, and they'll move to the left. The truth is that never happens. Like, then they learn the lesson of like, oh, what they'll actually do is they'll be like, oh no, we moved too far left, right? The party got dragged in this left direction, and that's what really happened. So maybe it's possible that it could be better, but I wouldn't bet on it, and I certainly wouldn't cast your vote based on these theories of like, well, maybe if this happens, then that will happen, because I just think you don't know. Like, you have to be humble about predicting exactly what the impact and the backlash and the dynamics will be of, you know, Democrats losing again or Republicans losing again. I think you just have to look at it straightforward, like, who do I want to vote for if I'm weighing my two options, or I want to dissent and I want to vote third party, or I want to protest by not voting at all. Like, weigh it out in terms of what is the outcome, just head to head. Who do you think is better? Who do you think would do a better
Hate is a strong word, Anthony raised. Strong word.
job? Because once you get into these complicated scenarios, I just think it's too messy to know.
I think that's right.
All right, thanks for watching. We're going to have more content.
All right, okie doke, lokes. So there you go. You don't have to look at her fucking face anymore, Anthony. We're gonna move on to propaganda's vid. I like Crystal Ball. She's okay. She's not the worst scum on the planet, I don't think. That's what I like about this crowd. You guys, you know the dirt on like every progressive YouTuber out there. So anyone who seems like they're cool, like Jimmy Dore, Nico House, you know the fucked up parts about their lives and like the fucked up positions they've had. You guys hit me to all that shit. So I mean, so these people seem okay, but you guys know all the dirt. So that's why I fuck with you guys. Let me see. Let me see. Where did I get Baby Yoda? Motherfucker. Oh shit. I know this video. Where did I get Baby Yoda? This is my cousin's Baby Yoda. It's actually my nephew. Or actually, I guess it would make him my second cousin, Baby Yoda. But yeah, this is J Flash's kid. Actually, I'm just babysitting, to be honest. You know. But let's see here. Pandering all the time to the progressives. A female jank, but with funding. I wouldn't call her a female jank. She's a lot more balanced and I think she's a lot more honest than jank, for sure. But the thing I like about the Hill is you can kick them to like the boomers and the Gen Xers and shit, and they just can't dismiss them because they don't have like a professional studio setting. Like the Hill, they look legit. So all that superficial shit that the boomers, that they go on, and everything keeping them away from getting their information from the internet, the Hill, they kind of bypass that, and they're like, okay, we can be professional too and still bring you progressive news. So, my mom watches the Hill. She won't fuck with Jimmy because Jimmy swears too much, but she'll watch the Hill because they're all clean cut and shit. So I know that's a good thing about the Hill. Yeah, well, hate is a strong word, but I don't like her. Nico's confused and watched The Last American Vagabond. Yeah, I fucks with the Last American Vagabond. He's good peoples. He's real hip to a lot of shit. But yeah, dude, I just saw this. I saw this little contraption the other day. We can watch it here. I would kill for this machine. If I could ride on the freeway with this fucking thing, I'd die a happy man. Yeah, I fucks with the Last American Vagabond. He's cool. But yeah, tell me, oh my god, tell me this doesn't look like so much fun. Look at this fucker, I'm so jealous. Yeah, Iron Man, eat your heart out. Yeah, I got a notification for I think the Last American Vagabond, but I didn't watch the video. But if you wanna, his videos are long as fuck. But if you wanna drop a link to something something a little bit short, we can check that out. What else do I have lined up here? Oh, some Ron for clone.
So,
yeah, let me guess, you guys hate this dude too. I like Ron. He's talking to maybe a girl, the tranny lady. I like her name. Very clever.
Let's get into you ran for Congress and your opponent was Adam Schiff.
I am so not a fan of him. So brutal. I mean, I know we were talking some about this off mic. I think he is one of the most repulsive people in all of government. And the reason I feel that way is because he has used the past 4 years to make himself this political celebrity. He is, I mean, it's so ironic that he's near Hollywood because he himself is a Hollywood cliche. He's basically just a failed actor who's doing this now. And he would walk over dead bodies in his own district to flap his gums about whatever a CIA talking point he's parroting that week. And he will tell you, Trump is this, Trump is that, and Trump is terrible. No one disputes that. Anyone with a pulse knows how terrible Trump is. But here's a guy who has made himself a celebrity by being this so-called resistance hero. Meanwhile, he votes to expand Trump's spying powers every opportunity he gets. He's never seen a war budget he hasn't liked. He's fine with the Patriot Act. He's on the wrong side of basically everything. He'll tell you Trump's enemy number one, but he'll expand his spying powers, fast track his judges. What's he really resisting?
You know, you're right. He is walking over dead bodies. He's walking over dead bodies every day in his district. Homeless people, unhoused people are dying every single day in our city. In the district that, or in the city that he lives in, Burbank, unhoused statistics rose 40% last year. 40%. So he is literally walking over dead people in the streets. You know, the thing about Adam Schiff is, again, a lot of people like him. And a lot of those people don't live in this district. A lot of people see what he has been doing on a national scale. They've been seeing, you know, his involvement in the Mueller report and, of course, the impeachment. And in that manner, it has turned him into a national hero of sorts. A lot of people look at Adam Schiff and they think, oh my gosh, he's trying to get President Trump impeached. He is my hero. But then if you look at his voting record probably doesn't reflect the kind of America that you want to live in, the kind of district that you want to live in California.
Well, and it goes beyond that. His record doesn't reflect opposing Trump.
And that's
I mean, other than the most obvious things, but at the end of the day, if you're going to say what a treasonous traitor someone is, and then you're going to allow them to spy with no restrictions on American citizens, you're either the worst politician ever, or you're just a liar, and it's just a scam, and you're just a phony. I think he's the latter. He's not a bad politician because he's convinced so many people of this scam, but he's definitely a scam artist.
Yeah, Tony, I saw that in the thumbnail or the description of the video for Last American Vagabond. At their what's that word I'm looking for? I guess they're just they're over. I'll just use the word overestimating how many deaths there are from COVID, and just assigning, pretty much any death to a COVID death or whatever. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but usually the Last American Vagabond, he's real good at citing the sources and all that shit. So, he's a good guy, and his information is pretty solid. So, I'm inclined to believe what I'm saying.
That's why he hates Trump so much. They're both scam artists. They are both con men.
Propaganda, you wrong. You wrong. I'm not even going to repeat what you said. You know what you said, sir.
And game recognizes game. And I think he is just so utterly despicable because he's preying upon people's hopes. There are people who I think their hearts are in the right place a lot of the times who genuinely believe that he's fighting for them. He's doing the opposite.
Karen. No, he's joking. He's joking, Karen.
And he knows what he's doing, and he doesn't care. And he uses it to get money. He will just go and he's like, the Republicans are being mean to me. Give me money. For what, Adam? What are we giving you money for? Your MSNBC appearance?
On that note, what are you giving money for? So I will agree with you. He might not be a good person, but he is a good politician. And, the gag is that his congressional campaign this past year when we ran, he was one of the most well-funded Democrats in the entire nation. His campaign.
Yeah, don't worry, Jordan's still an eligible bachelor from what I know. So you still got a shot, Karen.
Campaign raised about $10 million this election cycle. What does Adam Schiff's campaign need? They already have the name recognition. They already have the seats. It's, again, to continue power. And, one of the things that I've just tried to make people aware of is look at his voting record and tell me this is a person that you agree with. He has consistently voted for pretty much every war measure that he has been in since 2000. He voted for the Iraq war. He voted for the Afghanistan war. He voted to keep troops in Afghanistan. He voted for the Saudi invasion of Yemen, which is now the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. He voted to establish the...
Yes, I don't know too much about this Adam Schiff guy. He sounds like a prick, but I do know that all the supposed opposition to Trump and his administration, the supposed opposition, they're constantly voting for his war budgets and, increasing his spying powers. So, it's just pathetic. Like Nancy Pelosi, he'll rip up Trump's speech and then, just vote to increase his war budget. It's ridiculous. So that's why I'm like, I can't take any of these Democrats serious, or all these never Trumpers. They always bring up like the worst arguments, for why they oppose Trump. None of the decent humanitarian ones.
Homeland Security. He voted to establish ICE, and just last summer he voted to give more than $100 million to ICE. And all of that, when you live in a district that is more than 25% Latinx, it's wrong, it's immoral, and it's not a reflection of the people that live in your district that are voting for you. But he is one of those tricky kinds of Democrats that comes off as a progressive Democrat. He comes off progressive because he is pro-LGBTQIA. He is pro certain things that make him look like he's progressive. But what a lot of people are not checking is his voting record on a lot of these important things like war measures. He increases the military funding every single year. If we were to demilitarize in a way that we just reduced our military funding by 10%, 15%, the things that we could do in this nation with that money are almost endless. You know, we could end homelessness. We could ensure universal education and healthcare. But instead, what are we doing? We are continuing to manufacture weapons and enter war so that all of the donors of the military-industrial complex are seeing their return on investment. And it's so messed up. It's so messed up. And again, these are the things that you start to notice when you really look into an elected official and look at their policy, because the average voter, I don't think, really dives into the voting record of the candidate that they are voting for. They, you know.
Yeah, and that's sad. Like, that a candidate can just be like, oh, I'm pro LGBTQ XYZ, Black Lives Matter. All right, now let's bomb some Middle Easterners and build that wall. Like, it's ridiculous, you know. Like, they don't mean any of this shit. They're just spouting buzzwords and fucking slogans and catchphrases to fucking trick people who aren't paying that much attention and thinking that they're on their side when really they don't give a shit. I think we all know that.
Well, it's been reduced to this.
Well, we don't all know that, but everyone here is probably hip to that shit.
System of red or blue. Oh, well, I identify blue. I'm just going to vote blue, without even looking into how this person has voted blue. And it's just, I think it's time that people really start to wise up and vote for candidates that will actually reflect their values.
Amen. 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 So when
Oop, I was muted. Yeah, we're gonna check out Anthony's vid right now. Last time Anthony may watch some gangsta ass Cameron shit. It was cool. We were just fucking around. Let me see if the homie's back. Who are the real bad apples at Sunny Wanonta? Oh, Jason Burmis, yeah. Yeah, I was watching this guy earlier. It was a different video, though.
Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we have a whole lot to go over, as what you are looking at behind me is a group of students in an isolation dorm. You see, they're in the gym area where they're able to get a little bit of movement and be able to look out of the window because the conditions they were put under were horrendous. And this is last night, and I believe that's a White Claw or some kind of a seltzer in the one young girl's hand right there. And they look like they're having a good time, and they also look like they're not sick. So the latest numbers are out in my town, and I'm going to ask this question. It's a very simple question. At what number of infections versus hospitalizations are we done? Because when the facts aren't facts, you're Andrew Cuomo. But Andrew Cuomo this week was reporting under a 1% infection rate before all this, like 0.66%. Okay? Over 500 students have now tested positive. We're going to go over all the numbers that are students. Now, there's about 6,000 students max that go there. It's a little different this year because most of the classes were online anyway, but they didn't really come for that education. They came for what's behind me, to be human beings, to be close to one another, to smile, to have a good time. Okay? So they have that. Now, purposely, before they got here, you see all those people? They're majority from Long Island and from New York City. They would have tested positive prior to coming here in a PCR test, which we're going to go over how the New York Times and others say it's faulty anyway, and it actually suggests herd immunity. But we'll get there. Okay, we'll get to all of this. So these kids aren't sick. They're completely asymptomatic. I believe right now there's a report of one person with a fever, and I'm going to say this again, 0 hospitalizations. Now, I talked about how 500 of about 5,000, think about that, that's 1 in 10. And remember, they scared the shit out of these kids. Called them at midnight, told them to pack a bag, and then put them in here. I'm glad they're doing this. This has nothing to do with the spread of anything, and we're going to prove that. So purposely, they did not test them prior because they wouldn't have gotten their tuition money, and more importantly, they wouldn't be in a dorm, and they wouldn't have gotten that money either. The food, that rotten apple that you saw in the thumbnail, take a look, that's real. We're going to show you that. They gave that to kids. Okay?
That apple looked gross.
So we're going to go over all the numbers. We're going to talk about how now my community of about 2,000 plus in the inner city area without the kids, well, guess what? There's about 200 of those infections too. So again, 1 in 10. It's weird. It's odd. Okay, so about 1 in 10, still 0 hospitalizations. People want to act like there aren't old people that not only work on campus but live here. They want to act like there haven't been large gatherings in New York City all over the place where there were no outbreaks. This is fraud, this is criminal, and people need to go to jail, and we're going to break down all the numbers right now. How dare they? How dare they?
Yeah, so I don't know, when it comes to this corona thing, I don't really know too much about the virus except for it was most likely synthesized in a lab somewhere. I think the Last American Vagabond has reason to believe it actually started in China, but you know, it's not outside the realm of possibility. No, he said it's not outside the realm of possibility that it started in America. He didn't say China, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that it did start in China, is what I'm saying. So I don't know. Those are the two main suspects that I'm looking at, either America or China. You know, I think they're both pretty nefarious, and in my opinion, America's probably a little worse. I do know the virus is basically a cousin of the rhinovirus. Like it's basically just kind of a mutated cold. So if our immune systems can fight off a cold, I don't really see why it can't just fight off COVID. It should be a pretty similar, you know, fight there. But you know, as I said, it was built in a lab somewhere. And I know they probably did build the super virus to be, you know, a little tougher than the average virus. So it's pretty much all I can say as a layman in all this. And yeah, I know that mostly it's just been old and sick people who've been dying from it for the most part. When the outbreak first started, I felt like I was sick all summer. And I thought I had it, but I mean, I got tested at a hospital and I came up negative. So, you know, a lot of this shit could be a mix of hysteria and shit too. So I don't know, let's just let them continue.
I want to remind everybody that we are fully demonetized on this platform because the facts that you just heard aren't the facts that Andrew, Capo, Cuomo, and the gang want you to hear. Okay, they're not the facts that Gary Herzig wants to present. Remember, Cuomo and his chancellor allowed all these kids to come back to SUNY knowing they hadn't tested. In contrast, Hartwick, about 2,000 students, they made all their kids test. Now, they weren't from New York City and Long Island, so they weren't going to lose as much money in whatever positives came up first, but whatever, they didn't. As of now, out of the 2,000 there, 4. So instead of 1 in 10, they're 1 in 500. So you're telling me also that the Hartwick students, who are less than a mile away, didn't go to the same Walmarts, didn't go to the same bars and restaurants, didn't hang out with anybody in Oneonta? That's ridiculous. It's all a LARP at this point. I have 70 contact tracers and 3 testing sites here in Oneonta. Why? So we're fully demonetized here. No super chats anymore. $5, $10, $15 over on the GoFundMe link. Big donors, I need you now more than ever. It's down below.
Oh man, they demonetized them. I heard that's what they're doing to anybody, you know, who challenges the narrative of COVID. I think Thunderfoot has a video on that. Maybe we'll watch it later. But yeah, that's tragic. That's why I'm just gonna just say I don't know instead of just confidently spouting that it's nonsense or anything. Even though I'm already demonetized. Like, I'm not making money off any of this shit. I do it for you guys, for the fans, because I love you. And also because I'm on this journey too, this journey of seeking knowledge and shit. So it's a mutual benefit.
I'm going to be announcing some very cool things with Rockfin because I think I have a really great idea on how to give you a lot of different exclusive content, even more than we're getting. But today I will be uploading a 90-minute exclusive interview for premium members. And remember, if you go premium, you get everybody's stuff, but there's also free content on here as well. So make a free thing, but $9.99 a month. And you get not only mine, but it's like a Netflix for creators, and there are a lot of great creators there. Make sure you're thumbing the video up, subscribing and sharing, joining the Burmist Brigade, and watching all the documentary films for free. They are free in the playlist section. So important right now. Invisible Empire, A New World Order to Find, and Shade the Motion Picture. All right, so let's start with up to 90% of people who test positive for COVID barely carry any of the virus and are not contagious. Every stat about the disease is bogus. Now, this is actually an Irish science journalist.
I like hanging out with you guys too.
Okay, and people will go, oh, that's RT, man. RT's fake. It's Russian propaganda. The New York Times reported the same exact thing, that people aren't carrying enough of the virus. That actually suggests they have it, that they have the immunity to it, or they are not susceptible to it or to spread it, right? They absorbed it. Their immune system took care of it. They're not spreaders. And they're not showing any symptoms. 95+% have no symptoms whatsoever in Oneana. And one person has a fever. And then you have varying degrees of, like, I have a scratchy throat. But they're still here, and it serves another purpose other than the money they took. Now you have this outbreak of cases that are just cases. No one's sick. We're going to show you that in a minute. They get to push that 3 in 4 adults globally want to get vaccinated against something. By the way, something, guys, okay, that has a 0.6% death rate according to the WHO and a 0.4% according to the CDC by their latest public numbers. All right, but we're going to show you some video. We're going to get there. And now they're forecasting that this is going to more than double in the United States by January 1st, that the worst is yet to come. I'm going to ask it again. What number of positives in my small community with no hospitalizations prove that we need to stop lockdowns immediately and go back to normal life? I'm asking. Is it 1,000? Do I need another 300 or so? Is it 2,000? Would that do it? Is it 5,000? Is there a number of infections versus, not even deaths, hospitalizations that we need to be concerned about? Can anyone give me that number? Now, let's get into it. Okay, this is last night. Again, there's the picture there, right here. Now, the media wants you to believe that these kids spread the virus via parties. Now, I want you to see something.
Governor Cuomo is now blasting a chain smokers concert in the Hamptons over a lack of social distancing. Now, a health department investigation is underway. Video posted on social media shows huge crowds gathered in front of the stage with little space, but...
Let me just point to that, okay? Thousands of people in the Hamptons.
No, she said thousands of chain smokers. Like, why was that important to point out, that they're all chain smokers, and how could she even know that? What the fuck?
There was no outbreak afterwards. There was no hospital outbreak. There was no huge infection outbreak either. It's all about selective testing and enforcement. This is New York State. Now, there are a dozen other examples. I could talk about Sturgis. I could talk about just about any gathering, the one I went to, Nunn versus Militich, where people were together and there was no. But they want to tell you that this outbreak in Oneana is because college kids did this. They didn't test them before they came here, so there's no metric to weigh how many people would have tested positive after the fact. They did that on purpose, again, to get their money, but then after the fact, blur the line and feed you, literally feed you Johnny mother trucking nonsense. A few students threw parties. This is the New York Times. Shame. Now an entire SUNY campus is shut down. And remember, they sent them all home. They had everybody quarantined up there. That isolation dorm was just the infected. All right? Remember, they called them in the middle of the night, and they showed up in hazmat suits. This is psychological warfare.
And I never knew that Beastie Boys song would just become so literal. You know, now kids literally have to fight for their right to party. They've got to, like, go out and, like, do all these anti-lockdown marches and shit just for the right to party. The future sucks, man. It's unbelievable.
These kids, none of this is their fault. These are teenagers. They're not sick. They're wearing a mask like a slave. They're told not to love one another. Then this is the time that you start becoming an adult, that you make friends for the rest of your life. Some of you find your wife or your husband, right? And they don't want any of this. And remember, these are the sick kids in the isolation dorm. Okay? Take a look. And again, the outrage to me is totally brainwashing and manufactured. We just saw a much larger gathering. And they've been all over New York. By the way, if you didn't know, there were huge protests over in Rochester. Will there be a huge outbreak because of the protests? No. There have been protests throughout the state. There are no officials here. They literally is a big party happening next door. What the hell? And none of them are wearing masks. I'm pissed. What is going on in that hall? That is ridiculous. I'd be fine if these were normal circumstances, but seriously, we're in an isolation hall. They got the kids brainwashed pretty good too, some of them. I'm glad that there are some of them out there that are not.
I like how they spelled ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
I mean, God, there are no RAs or anyone checking in on us. This needs to be exposed. So let me show you the type of food that they were given. This is the vegetarian meal, which is some kind of a piece of like meat on a sandwich. And yeah, I mean, take a look. A little salad thing, a rotten apple. That's nice. That's nice. Let's look at the numbers again, because the numbers are important. 4 Hartwick students. Okay, now we have 2 supposedly that are linked to high school gatherings. In other words, community spread. 710 total confirmed cases. It's higher, guys. I want to let you know right now, it's higher. They're bleeding these numbers out. They put these out about an hour ago. Okay? So I guess I misspoke. Now we're at 9 confirmed in Hartwick students. But again, with all the false positives, you're going to get no hospitalizations. No hospitalizations. 0. 0, 0, 0, 0. 710 cases. So when does it end? When does it end? I want to know. And this is what people think. The same people telling you that these are irresponsible kids, etc. Just to show you how smart Americans are, by April 15th, after a full month of COVID lockdown, the U.S. had about 500,000 cases because of selective testing. That's all. Had they tested before that, a month before, you would have had those cases, by the way. But the facts aren't the facts. I mean, this is how brainwashed people are. Now we're up to almost 6.5 million cases. And yet, the death rate has plummeted. And the hospitalizations have plummeted too. It's right in your face. That means about 6 million people caught COVID after we started locking down. You know why? You know why? Because there's no evidence, according to the CDC, this came out in late June, everybody ignored it, no evidence-based data that state-level quarantines prevent anything.
Yeah, that's one thing I heard a lot about, that that all these precautions really didn't contain the outbreak at all, that there's no evidence. I think Last American Vagabond did a pretty thorough, he's done a few streams on why that is. But yeah, man, shit's crazy.
That's why. Because it doesn't work. But that's not the narrative. If everyone had just followed simple directions, if we listened to our dark overlords, our masters, for 8 short weeks, the whole thing would have been over. First it was 2, then it was 4, then it's 8, then it's 12, now lockdowns forever. Ricochet is what they call it. Some people just want to do things the hard way. No, some people are just brainwashed no matter what. Okay? And it's shutting down Hollywood, Batman, The Rock has it, right? No lockdown, no mask, no...
Yeah, I heard about that shit. They had to stop the new Batman movie, which, I mean, it looks like it could be okay. They usually don't make shitty Batman movies. That's one thing DC does well. Like, they make good cartoons, and they make good Batman movies. All their other movies and franchises kind of fail, but, you know, DC definitely has its strengths. But usually the Batman movies are cool. I like them. You know, once you get past all that, you know, the class warfare shit that, you know, that Batman does not address sometimes. If you can just look past all that political shit and just enjoy the movie, you know, yeah, I like Batman.
No hysteria, no problem. Sweden got it right. If you look at the pure numbers, again, I always like going...
Said, the Vagabond showed the Cambridge studies tonight. So, we can check that out later. Did you not send the link earlier? Or you can't fit... Yeah, you can't fit it in here? I don't know if you can find another link or that shows the video or whatever, man. Just drop that.
Over this because this was a great article. Take the time to actually read it. It's like 30 plus minutes. By the time I landed in Stockholm, the death rate stood at 57 per 100,000 people. No masks, no lockdowns. All right. However, with big lockdowns, Belgium had 87, Spain had 62, Britain had 62, Italy had 58, and now, okay, Sweden is developing herd immunity. Some countries' experts claim, but the figures say otherwise. Really? Again, show me the death rates. It's ridiculous. Again, no evidence. That's the CDC. And now, let's point out the fact, right now, 0.6%, if that.
Let me see. Karen, you've never seen any of the Batman movies? You've never even, like, seen the 90s ones with, like, George Clooney and, God, what's his fucking name? You know, all the old crazy 90s ones. Those weren't the best ones. I'd say the Christopher Nolan Batmans and everything that's come out since was probably a little bit better than that. But, you know, I enjoy them. You know, good popcorn flicks. And Propaganda hates Batman because he can't get over the contradictions, apparently. You're going to have to break that down, Propaganda. But I don't know. I just like seeing people get beat up sometimes, you know. I know people, they hate that shit. Like, he's just beating up poor people or whatever. I'm like, I guess. I feel you on that. I just try not to take it too serious. Even though, I don't know. And maybe it does have an effect on society and how people think. You know, maybe Batman should be more responsible with how he fights crime and shit. I don't know. I'm not the expert on these things. I watch movies, man. Play video games. I'm a simple man.
And it's actually lower. Again, I just want to say this beforehand. 0.4% is still the CDC's number. But when the facts aren't the facts, I've got to cite the authoritative content.
What we understand about mortality, there's different ways that mortality can be calculated. And if we look very crudely, if we look at the number of people that have died over the number of people that have been reported, you get a certain percentage. What many groups are looking at right now is what we're calling the infection fatality ratio, which is looking at the number of deaths among all of the people who have been infected. And right now, we don't know how many people have been infected because there are challenges with surveillance and detecting every single one of the cases. And certainly there are many unrecognized cases at the moment.
Unrecognized cases, all these asymptomatic ones we keep talking about that aren't tested. That if you tested a random population of 3,000 people, you'd probably get 200 to 300 positives, right?
So yeah, apparently there's just a lot of asymptomatic people walking around with COVID, and I don't know, maybe that's normal. You know, it's just another strain of rhinovirus in the end. But yeah, Propaganda. Batman is a rich oligarch that beats up mentally retarded clowns. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But you know, if you're not into that, you know, you don't have to watch Batman. Some people get their kicks that way. It's a funny way of looking at it.
That are completely and totally asymptomatic, but the facts aren't the facts. But put that into account, and you have an even lower mortality rate, is what she's telling you. But she's going to give you the number now, 0.6%.
What we understand from many of these studies, these are estimates of the IFR, the infection fatality ratio, is that the estimates hover around less than 1% of 0.6%. And there are a couple of studies that are out.
So 0.6 and 0.4. And we shut down society, and we're trying to blame a bunch of kids that are getting rotten apples sent to them that thought they were going to have a college experience. And they're going to use these numbers. Again, 700 plus cases in my very small community. There's not 10,000 people in this area. All right, we're getting to the point of almost 1 in 10. So I will ask you again, at what number are we happy and we just reopen everything because there's no hospitalizations? This should be great news. But they're spinning it into awful news. And they're trying to, bring this in nationwide as lockdown 2 before the election. These are the facts. When the facts aren't the facts, I'm not perfect. But guys, I'm trying to tell you the truth. $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. Big donors, I need you now more than ever. We've been doing it on our own over a year. We're getting ready to move to Iowa. I think I've got big...
You heard the man, send him money. He's in dire straits and he needs money. No, I'm just playing. Nothing wrong with wanting money, I guess. You know, I'm sure he's got a girlfriend to take care of and a dog to feed somewhere. So nothing wrong with that. Let's see if I can find... let me see. Propaganda studies show that coronavirus can give you heart problems and permanent scarred lungs. Yeah, I heard that too. That was what they were saying initially. It was like one of the first things they said about corona. They said it was basically like SARS and AIDS, like put together. So I don't know, man. I hear it's pretty gnarly, but then I hear it's not that bad if you're young. You hear different things. So you know, this virus is it's tearing up the country, man. It's tearing up communities. It's fucking awful. No one can come to a consensus on the fucking thing.
Remember the swamp?
At the end of the day, I'm just gonna do what I always do. You know, stay the fuck away from everybody until this shit blows over, and probably a little bit after it blows over. But now, got the
Swine flu
last
scare of
American
1976.
vagabond.
That was the year the U.S. government told us all that swine flu could turn out to be a killer that could spread across the nation. And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic. Dr. David Sencer, then head of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, is now in private industry. He devised the swine flu program, and he pushed it. You began to give flu shots to the American people in October of 76. October 1st. By that time, how many cases of swine flu around the world had been reported?
There had been several reported, but none confirmed.
Your dad had COVID, Anthony? That's fucking wild, man.
Where did this so-called deadly variety of flu, where did it first hit back in 1976? It began right here at Fort Dix in New Jersey in January of that year when a number of recruits began to complain of respiratory ailments, something like the common cold.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up, a concise show dedicated to bringing you the most relevant independent news as we see it from the last 24 hours. Sunday, September 6, 2020. Thank you for joining me today. I have a very important show for you today. And this is actually, I wasn't planning on doing a show today. And this I just had to bring to you. And it will most likely be a quick show, or at least as long as it takes to go over this one topic. And you know, that sometimes can take longer than we expect. But there's This is profound. This is a really important point in this discussion, and I'm really going to do my best to just let the information speak for itself. So let's get right to this, and I want to begin with the study itself. And this is a really important discussion here that I want everyone to kind of do their best to put aside what they may have thought beforehand, so we can not allow that to get in and get muddled with what we're dealing with in the information we're staring at today.
Yeah, no worries, Tony. I enjoyed that intro. It's real retro.
So, without further ado, let's get to the information. The study that it actually has been out for longer than you might expect. This is entitled Public Health Lessons Learned from Biases in Coronavirus Mortality Overestimation. This is on Cambridge University Press, Disaster Medicine and Public Health Preparedness. Now, this is just the abstract. Now, it reads, now I have the highlighted part that is the most important, but I'm going to read the whole thing for you. Now, after this, we're going to go through the whole thing for so the most important parts that hopefully, nonetheless, you'll still read in its entirety, and as well as an article that came out that is discussing it that gives it a little more texture. But here we go. In testimony before U.S. Congress on March 11, 2020, members of the House Oversight and Reform Committee were informed that estimated mortality for the novel coronavirus was 10 times higher than for seasonal influenza. Additional evidence, however, suggests the validity of this estimation could benefit from vetting for biases and miscalculations. The main objective of this article is to critically appraise the coronavirus mortality estimation presented to Congress. Informational texts from the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are compared with coronavirus mortality calculations in congressional testimony. This is important. Results of this critical appraisal reveal information bias and selection bias in coronavirus mortality overestimation. The numbers. And most likely caused by misclassifying an influenza infection fatality rate as a case fatality rate. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, it will. We'll go through it more. Public health lessons learned for future infectious disease pandemics include safeguarding against research biases that may underestimate or overestimate an associated risk of disease and mortality, reassessing the ethics of fear-based public health campaigns, which is a very well-documented thing that they discussed doing. And it says, and providing full public disclosure of adverse effects from severe mitigation measures to contain viral transmission. Discussing, so public health lessons learned from what they're discussing here. And this is just the abstract, is they're saying that we've basically learned that the reactions of our government were bad, that they cause problems, the severe mitigation measures to contain viral transmission and the adverse effects from it.
Yeah, that's a decent point, propaganda, You don't want to get sick, period, even if, the sickness is being a little bit blown out of proportion or whatever. Because there's consequences to that. Yeah.
And it's very clearly documented in this study. Now, again, to be clear, as always on this show, this is just one study. It's peer-reviewed. That's very, a very respected side. The point is just it's one study. So take it in to digest it. But understand, we hadn't actually talked about this yet on the show, but there is another study that just came out of California that is saying the same ultimate thing, that it's been wildly overestimated. So this seems to be coming out in more ways than one. And I'll probably touch on the California study, which I only just saw the other day in a different show, because this is only what we're focusing on today. Now, this is just the abstract. Now, before I go into the actual article itself, or rather the study in its entirety, I wanted to go over something that somebody posted on Reddit that I thought was very interesting. Now, this is on a subreddit in Reddit. They're talking about, they just posted the study that we just went over, the abstract anyway. And all he says is, good post. Although it won't be well received now, which I argue it won't for, on either side for a whole bunch of reasons. It says, this is essential reading for anyone, which we're going to go over, who is interested in understanding why government responded the way they did. You can read this and still agree the actions were appropriate, in parentheses, or not. Either way, it is an excellent plain English breakdown of the data, assumptions, and events which got us from January to September 2020.
Now, what he's saying there, as I take it, is that you on either side of this, like from even a side of the people that agree with the lockdowns and agree with the government and the actions they took, they can point to this and say, see, the government did what they thought was right. And it was the experts who made a mistake. And we'll get into what that really was in the article. It breaks down to a basic math calculation error. That's what the study ultimately finds. So they could argue essentially that the government, acting in good faith, which I don't think is what happened, just took the numbers from the experts, and we ended up here. And so you're going to hold someone accountable, but it won't be the government as usual. I argue that there's more than one thing going on here, and this will flesh out as we go forward. But the point being that the government either ultimately created a situation to be able to do this, or recognized in the middle of something that they would be able to utilize it and have yet to let go, despite recognizing it wasn't there. Now, I think you know where my opinion lands in there, but nonetheless, it's interesting that you could see it this way. And on the other side of it, you could argue that this was ridiculous, that they just took this at face value and ran with it, which destroyed everything on this now clearly shown to be inaccurate assessment of what was going to happen. Now, here is the study itself. And the abstract we just read is right there. I believe I just screwed up something that I had highlighted, but we'll figure it out as we go along. Now, the introduction is where I'm going to begin. Now, again, as I said, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to point some things out, but I just want you guys to hear what this is trying to say and understand the breakdown. And we'll finish with something that might make it a little more clear. On September 23rd, 1998, the U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, permanently lost contact with the $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter. A simple miscalculation, a failure to convert English measurements to metric measurements, doomed the Mars space mission, making
propaganda. I wash my hands after I touch Vicious E's balls, before and after. I don't recall this event, so apparently I was drugged and propaganda flew down from Canada to visit my balls. So, thanks for that. I hope it was a special moment for you.
An example, essentially, that people, even these kind of experts, can make a simple mathematical error. Of course, this is making the argument that what happened with COVID-19 was an accident. And it could have been to begin with. Nonetheless, I think even if that's the case, we can clearly see that they have not, even the fact that, again, I think I forgot to make this point, that was when I first showed you this, that'll blow your mind, is that this study came out on August 12th, and yet we have yet to hear about it. Think about how crazy that is. I mean, that is mind-blowing that this kind of assessment can come out from Cambridge, and it's August 12th, and we haven't heard a peep about this. All we've heard is more, fear, danger, it's getting worse. Knowing that they're using this faulty information. But the argument is that even at NASA, they could make this mathematical error, a simple miscalculation. A later investigation found that backup quality assurance procedures were not in place at NASA to catch and correct that simple miscalculation.
Yeah, you're not touching the baby Yoda, all right? He will sense you coming from a mile away, all right? The force is very strong in him, in case you haven't heard, you son of a bitch.
Fast forward 22 years to another crisis involving a U.S. government agency. On March 11th, 2020,
all right, don't make a force joke about the force being strong in him. I know, I can see you doing it. Don't.
The U.S. Congress House Oversight and Reform Committee received information from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIH, concerning the novel coronavirus, severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, and coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19, based on the data available at the time. Congress was informed that the estimated mortality rate for the coronavirus was 10 times higher than for seasonal influenza, which helped launch a campaign of social distancing, organizational and business lockdowns, and shelter-in-place orders. Previous to the congressional hearing, a less severe estimation of coronavirus mortality appeared in a February 28, 2020 editorial released by NIH and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Published online in the New England Journal of Medicine, the editorial stated, the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has caused a fatality rate of approximately 0.1%. And remember, we talked about this at the time. Almost a parenthetical afterthought, The NEJM editorial inaccurately stated that 0.1% is the approximate case fatality rate of seasonal influenza. By contrast, the World Health Organization reported that 0.1% or lower is the approximate influenza infection rate, not the case fatality rate. To fully appreciate the significance of the discrepancies in fatality rate usage by NIAID, the CDC, and the World Health Organization, brief definitions of relevant epidemiological terms follow. Now, it gets into the idea of case fatality rates, and I want to jump over here just for a moment, and this is the article we're going to get to in a moment. This is from RT, which is the reason it's important to focus on the study is because of people's political perceptions and just because it's being read through something like this, even within Fox and CNN. People on the left will hate I can't read something from Fox, and they'll just refuse to acknowledge anything that's in there, despite the fact that the links go to the study and so on. But nonetheless, it's an excellent article, and it's actually written by Malcolm Kendrick, a doctor and author who works as a GP for the National Health Service in England. So someone who has a right to speak on such things. It says the 1% blunder, how a simple but fatal math mistake by U.S. COVID-19 experts caused the world to panic and order lockdowns. Or something that they made happen in order to make this all go the way, or that's something we have to ask as possible.
Yeah. So that's another thing I heard really early on is that the COVID hysteria, the COVID pandemic really wasn't that much different than a seasonal flu or something like that, and that the numbers being blown out of proportion or whatever. So I don't know. You got different experts saying different things. It's super inconvenient for people trying to find the truth, but it makes sense.
And I am very clear on the fact that that's something that could be possible with the people we're dealing with here. But it says when you strip everything else out, the reason for the lockdown comes from a single figure, 1%. This was the prediction that COVID, if left unchecked, would kill around 1% of us. Now it says, first, and this is important, this is what the study is getting into. There's the infection fatality rate, the IFR, which is the total number of people who are infected by a disease and the number of them who die. This figure includes, and this sounds confusing, and this was confusing when I first read it, but go through both of these. This figure includes those who have no symptoms at all or very mild symptoms, those who stayed at home, coughed a bit, and watched outbreak. Then there's the case fatality rate, the CFR. This is the number of people suffering serious symptoms who are probably ill enough to be in a hospital. Clearly, people who are seriously ill, the quote cases, are going to have a higher mortality rate than those who are infected, many of whom don't have symptoms. Put simply, this is important, all cases are infections, but not all infections are cases. So basically it says, which means the CFR will always be far higher than the IFR. With influenza, the CFR is about 10 times higher as the IFR, because the CFR being 10 times higher than the IFR includes a lot of infections that aren't necessarily people who are symptomatic or transmissible and so on. Right? So that the bottom line is that it can be way bigger. And if you confuse those two things, it can be catastrophic, which we are experiencing.
So basically, what I got is the CFR is the case fatality rate, and the IFR is the infected fatality rate, and it's the case fatality rate that's always going to be higher because you don't really know who's infected. So let me see. I'm trying to just keep up with this shit, man. So yeah.
It says the air started in America but didn't end there. Now it says I'll come back to that actually in a moment, but this was important because I wanted to skip past the way that they were going over this, just because it was much more clear on that article. Now it says, make sure. Yeah, it says because different types of fatality rates can vary widely, it is imperative to not confuse fatality rates with one another. Else misleading calculations with significant consequences could result, which is what this whole thing is about. Interestingly, a search of the keyword term infection fatality rate on the CDC website returned no matching results, nor was the epidemiological term located in a 511-page CDC publication. Principles of Epidemiology in Public Health Practice. This terminology omission in conjunction with questionable use of of fatality rate terminology in the NEJM, New England Journal of Medicine editorial, raises red flags, warning of possible inaccuracies in the coronavirus mortality estimation presented to Congress. Similar to the need to vet for miscalculations that might have rescued NASA's 1988 Mars mission, vetting the coronavirus mortality estimation for miscalculations and biases may benefit the validity of mortality conclusions. Therefore, the purpose of this article is to present an ad hoc, critical appraisal of the coronavirus mortality estimation presented to U.S. Congress on March 11th, 2020. Now, it's incredible to me, and this is what these studies always do, and fair enough, you err on the side of, you don't have enough to point to one person directly. The bottom line is, it's almost incredible to me that we can't see how there's no way every part of that can be just oops. All of us, that every single step of this is a complete oopsie. We just miscalculation, yes, but up until now, and still, the obvious point again, and this whole point, the whole discussion today, we should think about this, that this was published on August 12th, and nobody's talking about it. So that's almost confirms itself that they do not want to admit that this is a real catastrophic mistake, or obviously don't want us to see that this wasn't something that was calculated. However you want to look at it, that they're hiding it from you, and that's absolutely incredible. Jumping to discussion. Confusion between case fatality rates and infection fatality rates may seem trivial, and it is easy to overlook at first. But this confusion may have ultimately led to the unintentional miscalculation in coronavirus mortality estimation. Again, always erring on, that it was an accident. Just a quick, just an entire, it just makes me laugh. I can't even help it. But an entire institution wide, from top to bottom, from media and experts they bring on, that all of this was just missed. But it says IFRs from samples across the population include undiagnosed, asymptomatic, and mild infections, and are often lower compared to CFRs, which are based exclusively on relatively smaller groups of moderately to severe ill-diagnosed cases at the beginning of an outbreak. Due to host defense mechanisms and an autoimmunity provided by innate and adaptive immune responses, asymptomatic infections are often prevalent in influenza. With many asymptomatic infections already identified in COVID-19, it appears unlikely that the IFR in an influenza-like illness like COVID-19 would approximate the disease's CFR. Pre-symptomatic infections can also lower the proportion of asymptomatic infections. For example, a CDC report found that asymptomatic individuals identified through PCR testing developed symptoms a week later, and those individuals were reclassified as having been pre-symptomatic at the time of testing. Now, there's a lot of information coming out right now that's relevant to this, but I'm going to maybe cover the next day. More about the PCR testing, more about the idea of the pre-symptomatic, asymptomatic. There's a huge study that just came out on the National Science Library, the NIH Library of Science, where they post all these studies. There's a huge one out today, as I just saw it, that is discussing the fact that 455 people who were asymptomatic, and that's important, so it's only asymptomatic, not showing symptoms, 455 people were introduced to an asymptomatic person or people with close contact, enough to, arguably get them sick based on what we know, and all 455 of them came back with no diagnosable anything in regard to transmission. And that is huge, of course, because the whole asymptomatic discussion is what they use right now.
So 400 people came in contact with someone who was positive for COVID, and they all showed up negative for COVID, I guess is what he's saying. It's pretty impressive, or miraculous, depending on how you want to look at it.
Justify damn near everything. That we don't know who could have it, right? Well, that's a big deal. But again, I'll get to that more because this is what we're focusing on. But nonetheless, this stuff is incredibly interesting. Now, it says in Figure 1, hold on, I may actually be skipping this part. Oh, actually, no, I wanted to get here. In Figure 1, 4 cases grouped, and you have a group here you can see, or excuse me, an illustration. 4 cases grouped in the dotted line box are also included among 7 infections, illustrating that all cases are infections, but not all infections are cases, like the RT article was discussing. A potential point of confusion in media reports, right again, that this was a confusion. That nobody from any walk of any expertise was able to point this out during this whole 8-month process, right? For example, a high number of coronavirus infections were discovered in U.S. meatpacking plants in Iowa, but these infections were reported as cases in the media, potentially causing a type of information bias known as misclassification. And this is incredibly important. Misclassification refers to the erroneous classification of an individual, a value, or an attribute into a category other than that to which it should be assigned. This type of information bias in epidemiological research can lead to underestimates or overestimates of associated disease and mortality risks. And here's the graphic for people to see. If you want to stare at it for a while, just pause the video. Now it says down here, the same information we were reading off. Now it says CFRs and IFRs represent different segments of a targeted population and contain widely different proportions of non-fatal infections. Therefore, misapplying findings or generalizing inferences between these two groups can cause a type of selection bias known as sampling bias or ascertainment bias. I mean, what type of bias don't our media exude today? It's ridiculous. In this type of bias, people who do not represent segments of the population to whom findings apply. Furthermore, quote, comparisons of the CFR of one disease with the IFR of another are mostly useless, end quote. And sampling bias can lead to serious inaccuracies, as when Congress was informed that the coronavirus is 10 times more lethal than in seasonal influenza, basically implying based off the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about and what you've already seen, that was the case, that this was incorrect, that this information being told to Congress was a miscalculation. That's where we are right now. And this is basically undeniable as far as anything I can tell you right now, as far as all of my research and everything I've looked into, and I've read this all the way over. It seems, again, oops, I'm supposed to not insert my opinion here, but this is powerful stuff. Now, jumping back here for a second to what this part was about. Enter the mad modelers of the lockdown. In the UK, the group I call the mad modelers of lockdown, the Imperial College experts, created the same panic, which we all remember this. On March 16th, they used an estimated IFR of 0.9% to predict that without lockdown, COVID would kill around 500,000 in the UK. Now, this is interesting. The ad with the swine flu, which, by the way, we know is not what's happening, but it says with swine flu, remember that the IFR started at around 2%. At the end, it was 0.02%, which was 5 times lower than the lowest estimate during the outbreak. The more you test, the lower the IFR will fall. Now think about that, and we knew this back then. We knew it in the beginning, the 70s version. We knew it in the 2000s version, the early. I mean, we just talked about all of these. The swine flu has been used more than once, and they've been caught lying about this more than once. And here we are, letting it all happen again. It's quite incredible. I mean, sure, we could pretend this was mistakes, and it might have been. But it seems kind of hard to miss how many times we've been in this position. Now it says, and this relates to what we were just reading, yes, we are testing and finding more so-called cases, as you will. But the hospitals and the ICUs are virtually empty. Almost no one is dying of COVID anymore. And most of those who do were otherwise very ill. Instead of celebrating that, we've artificially created a whole new thing to scare ourselves with. We now call a positive test a COVID, quote, case. This is not medicine. A, quote, case is someone who has symptoms. A case is not someone carrying tiny amounts of virus in their nose. Now, however, you test positive and you're a case. Never in history has medical terminology been so badly mangled. Never have statistics been so badly mangled. How in the world is this being allowed to happen? Like on such a tangible, obvious level where these things are being manipulated. Basic things like terminology use. Where are all the doctors? Oh, that's right, they're being censored when they speak up. You know, that's what's happening right now. This is so obvious. It says, but we panicked and we added hugely to the toll, which is, we know what happened.
Yeah, man, crazy times, man. Where, I want to hear doctors on both sides of the spectrum. I want to hear both their opinions. I want to hear experts from both sides, man. And when you have one side being censored, it's not doing anybody any good. It doesn't do the doctors any good. It doesn't do society any good. So, yeah, man. It's just tragic that I see all the censoring coming from one side, regardless of what the truth is. And I think that's just a bummer. And yeah, Tony, I'm glad you just recommended the video, man. You know, thank you. And if anybody else has anything else they want to show, just drop a link. Probably gonna watch some funnier shit. You got J Flash in the house. He's a little tired. He's eating, but once he's got some energy, he might hop on later.
The actions caused where we are right now. And the government actions is the point. Now it says, Congress was informed the coronavirus is 10 times, as we were just reading, a comparison of coronavirus and seasonal influenza, CFRs, may have been intended during congressional testimony, but due to misclassifying an infection fatality rate as a case fatality rate. The comparison turned out to be between an adjusted coronavirus CFR of 1% and an influenza IFR of 0.1%. And again, that's based on the assumption that this was a misclassification and not an intentional diagnosis in the correct word there, but an intentional misrepresentation. Making sure that this went a way that would drive to the situation that has been created, which is now being used to justify the technocratic reimagination of our world. Yeah, there's no profit motive there at all. No incredible million different motives that we could get into. It says, had the adjusted coronavirus mortality rate not been lowered from 3% to 1%, fatality comparisons of the coronavirus to the IFR of seasonal influenza would have increased from 10 times higher to 20 to 30 times higher. By then, epidemiologists might have been alerted to the possibility of a miscalculation in such an alarming estimation. Now over to mitigation measures. It says, as the campaign to mitigate coronavirus transmission was implemented from March into May 2020, expected coronavirus mortality totals in the United States appeared much lower than the overestimation reported in congressional testimony on March 11th. And this is where you need to begin to ask yourself, why did people not begin to go, hey, wait a minute, right? This is at a time where, I mean, imagine how much more damage has been done since then until now, even though it was catastrophic then. If they would have been like, wait a minute, something's wrong, and the point is no one did. And that's not without them being aware that there was a discrepancy. Now it says, compared to the most recent season of influenza, severe influenza A, H3N2, in 2017 to 2018, with 800,000 U.S. deaths reported by CDC officials, 80,000 U.S. deaths reported by CDC officials. U.S. coronavirus mortality totals had just reached 80,000 on May 9, 2020. By then, relative to the 2017-18 influenza, it was clear that the coronavirus mortality total for the season would be nowhere near 800,000 deaths, inferred from the tenfold mortality overestimation reported to Congress. Now, even after adjusting for the effect of successful mitigation measures, that's an important argument, that may have slowed down the rate of coronavirus transmission, it seems, according to Cambridge, unlikely that so many deaths were completely eliminated by a non-pharmaceutical intervention like social distancing, which was only intended to contain infection transmission, not suppress infections and related fatalities. And I find it a glaring, deafening absence of the pointing to masks in this entire, you'll notice. I think there's a reason for that, because social distancing is the only thing that's been scientifically shown to actually have an effect in regard to these things, outside of hand washing, which they're not including. But after adjusting for the effect, and this is what the argument might be, that, well, the only reason it didn't get so bad is because of the mitigation measures. But this study goes on to point out and show you, based on the information, that that's, according to them, simply not the case. That in fact caused far more damage. Now it says also in early May 2020, just make sure I didn't miss that part, a New York State survey of 1,269 COVID-19 patients recently admitted to 113 hospitals found that most of the patients had been...
Yes, Baby Yoda is adorable, Karen. We love the baby. And the baby loves you. Say hi to Karen, Yoda. He's shy. Don't take it personal.
Following shelter-in-place orders for 6 weeks, which raised state officials' suspicions about social distancing effectiveness. Still, polls showed that public credited social distancing and other mitigated measures for reducing predicted COVID-19 deaths and for keeping people safe from the coronavirus. It says, surprisingly, Disproportionate mortality increases in Italian and American healthcare facilities during the height of the COVID-19 outbreak were not unique. Similar healthcare facility crises occurred during the 2016-2017 influenza season in Italy and during the 17-18 influenza season in the United States. Yet, shockingly, these earlier outbreaks did not appear to receive the same intensive media coverage as COVID-19. I wonder why. That's a huge point. Why not? Right? There's an obvious overlap here, but yet this is a hype, and that's what the point even Cambridge is pointing out. Although media reports of new coronavirus infections reinforce the public's belief that the virus was continuing to spread, greater levels of testing may have increased detection of infections that were already prevalent throughout the population. Where have we heard that before? I don't know, the entire independent media that's calling this thing right for quite a while now? I mean, it's incredible that this can be discussed. This would have been censored a few weeks ago if it was discussed on YouTube. It says, in addition, the accuracy of coronavirus tests rushed into production during the pandemic were unknown. Yeah, exactly. I would argue that they were unknown, and to a degree that was exactly why they were chosen, because of the relevance of the false positive. The prevalence, that they know that it was there. Now it says PCR testing, they even note this in the study, has been in use since the detection of the H5N1 influenza virus in 2005. But a serious limitation of PCR testing is that nucleic acid detection is not capable of determining the difference between infective and non-infective viruses. Yeah, well, exactly. That's exactly what we've been saying, and that's exactly why there's a huge asterisk next to all of this. Now, and I think that's the point. Now, it says, moreover, the CDC modified criteria to record coronavirus mortality by including, quote, probable and, quote, likely deaths in the International Classification of Disease Code for COVID-19. Yeah, we know that too. And the point is, all of these things combined with probably 6 other things we could talk about in regard to the numbers, other asterisks and caveats here, that at the end of the day, all these things, one of these should be enough to say, hey, you can't use those to arrest somebody. You can't use those to force things on people, because clearly they're not accurate, but here we are. And that's incredible. But there's a reason for that, in my opinion. Now I want to make sure I didn't miss another part here. Yeah. Interesting. There's so much in here that we could go through, but I want to make sure I didn't miss the part that I had highlighted. Well, anyway, we'll start here because there was a section here in regard to, we were just reading mitigating effects. I mean, it's important stuff here, right? I mean, again, the end of the day, you guys should be reading this entire thing. I mean, this is very, very important to the development of this story.
It's a real intense document. And I think Secular Talk, they're not. Kyle's not super deep into this side of the debate, but he did hit me to the story that I think Russia or some other country they developed some sort of vaccine against the virus that they were willing to give out to the world, and that America, the United States, was the only country that rejected it. And I can only assume that's because, we want our pharmaceutical companies and Bill Gates and, all of our, private corporations to profit off the vaccine and the cure and not any foreign ones. So, just more petty capitalism shit.
See where we were here on this one. Either way, we'll jump over here and we'll start off, and we're going to keep going on fear and collateral damage, because we were just talking about this on the last show. Psychological adverse effects such as anxiety, anger, and post-traumatic stress have been linked to restrictive public health mitigation measures due to isolation, frustration, financial loss, and fear of infection. A June 8, 2020 survey of the Association of Canadian Studies found that fear of contracting the coronavirus affected 51% of Canadians and 56% of U.S. Venturing out in the public during the reopening phase was stressful to 50% to Canadians and 56% of Americans. And the second wave of the virus was also expected by 76% of Canadians and 64% of Americans. Furthermore, the possibility exists that yet another novel virus could emerge, potentially reigniting a perpetual process of unfounded fear and unnecessary lockdowns if mortality estimations are not properly vetted. I mean, that's a straight up, that is very clear. The bottom line is that regardless of what our perceptions were, that because we have other things that may circulate back around, that could lead to a perpetual, endless biosecurity state, creating fear and unnecessary lockdowns based on things that aren't really there. That's what it's saying here. It says fear in contrast to moral civic duty and political orientation. So make sure I read that correctly. Fear, in contrast to moral civic duty and political orientation, was shown to be a more powerful predicator of compliance with mitigation behavior in response to a viral pandemic. I mean, this needs to be ringing true in your mind right now with the parasite stress theory. Fear, in contrast to moral civic duty and political orientation, was shown to be a more powerful predicator of compliance with mitigating behavior and response to a viral pandemic, but with decreasing well-being and poorer decision-making. Isn't that just spot on? Studies have shown that fear impairs performance of cognitive tasks through debilitating anxiety and worry, which is affecting the whole planet right now. That's healthy, right? Even if a threat ceases to exist. Where have we heard that before? Prolonged fearful avoidance of threats is maladaptive and restricts to a return to normal social interaction and productivity. For example, after the outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, has ended in 2004, avoidance behavior continued to restrict people's social interactions and prevent people from returning to work. Now, think about that. So this is something that was recognized by governments, and this rings true with the parasite stress theory. That they're recognizing, okay, well, we need this to be a perpetual status, and people will fall into line. Now, that's my perception. Now, it says exaggerated levels of fear were driven by, since this is coming from Cambridge, and to be clear, that this is Cambridge University Press. Now, it says, exaggerated levels of fear were driven by sensationalist media coverage during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it cites 3 different citations all this stuff is cited at the bottom. And yet, while the public was ordered to lock down, overall costs and benefits to society from severe mitigation measures had not been assessed. That will go down forever. That people need to be held accountable for that. Like, you can't just claim you were doing what you thought was best for us. I mean, that does not fly in the face of the actions that we're seeing happen today. It says fear of infection also prevented people from seeking needed healthcare services in hospitals during the pandemic. The ethics of implementing fear-based public health campaigns needs to be reevaluated, as if that ever should have been something that they thought was okay, to basically either lie or use hyped fear to get you in place because that's your best interest. Sounds sort of like the lying for their truth, or the Smith Modernization Act, so they can just say, oh, we're lying to you for national security, right? I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that we get pumped full of today, and that the blue checks can't stop talking about their moral righteousness and their altruism. It's not. You're mindlessly pandering to an authoritarian state. That's what's happening right now. I was going to say oligarchy, but yeah, authoritarian is much more spot on. It says the ethics of implementing fear-based public health campaigns needs to be reevaluated for the potential harm these strategies can cause. Obviously, dissemination of vital health information to the public should employ emotionally persuasive messaging without exploiting and encouraging overreactions based on fear. Like give them information that they need to understand and then allow them to make decisions for themselves. Oh, that's incredible. In addition, legal and ethical violations associated with mitigation of pandemic diseases were previously investigated by Institutes of Medicine in 2007. So they've already investigated this exact situation. Legal and ethical violations associated with acting as if you're mitigating a pandemic. It says people, or, doing so and then making these mistakes by accident, people should have the right to full disclosure of all information pertinent to adverse impacts of mitigation measures during a pandemic, including information on legal and constitutional human rights issues, and the public should be guaranteed a voice in a transparent process as authorities establish public health policy. Exactly. And guess what they've been doing instead? Censoring anybody who challenges the narrative. People like us, or even actual doctors that speak up and go, hey, here's a big problem. We have science that shows that lockdowns cause this. And World Health Organization challenges that. You're deleted, you're censored. And guess what? They were correct. And this is correct. This is stuff that's been very clear for a while, and yet they just hide it from you and force it on you. How in the world can that seem normal, and how can that seem associated in any way with the concept of freedom and liberty and democracy? Now it says, lastly, or people should have the right. Yeah, we read that part. Lastly, severe mitigating measures during the COVID-19 pandemic caused considerable global social and economic disruption. I think that's pretty obvious to everybody. Enforced lockdowns, and if the point should be ringing in your mind right now, based on something that wasn't really what we were told, period. Slam dunk. That's where we are right now. Enforced lockdowns increased domestic violence, closed businesses and schools, laid off workers, restricted travel, affected capital markets, threatened the security of low-income families, and saddled governments with massive debt. Between February and April 2020, and when they say that, that really means you, because you are the one that's saddled with that debt. February and April 2020, U.S. unemployment rose from 3.5 to the lowest in 50 years to 14.7%. A recession in the United States was also officially declared in June 2020 by the National Bureau of Economic Research, ending 128 months of historic economic expansion, or, based on the obviously misrepresented numbers that are always misrepresented. From Bush to Obama to anybody else you want to talk about, they lie about that stuff. But, partisan argument, go. But it says, of relevance, economic downturns are associated with higher suicide rates compared to times of prosperity. Obviously, we're seeing that now. An increased suicide risk may be
I think it's fun. I think it's crazy, man, that the pandemic leads to higher rates of domestic violence and shit. That really sucks that none of this was taken into account, or maybe it was, and they pushed past it or whatever. I mean, but yeah, there are a lot of side effects to this lockdown that I really don't think they took into account, honestly. And I don't know if you guys can hear me. I got the fan on now, so it might sound a little. If you hear anything, that's the air conditioning. And yeah, Karen, we'll be back. I'll probably finish watching this in a bit. We'll probably move on to the next vid. But thank you, Tony Watches Closely, for that righteous vid. It was very informative. Let's see what else we got going on here.
Boys and girls, this has been a while.
Alright, so this vid is OG Shadow and his homie Mr. Blue. Got some horror stories coming out of Mexico here, so let's see what the homies got to say.
While coming. Excuse the sound of air conditioner, it's where we're at. You guys have asked a lot about our friend Mr. Blue, and I've been kind of putting this together for a while with him because, just getting passed out for some people makes them nervous. So, we're here at his house, it's Mr. Blue's house, do this interview. I thought this would be the best place to do it. Very hot today, so excuse, like I said, the noise. So, I'm going to ask him, I'm going to say it, translate to you guys. Alrighty then. So, Mr. Blue, I'm going to ask him, tell him where he's from and everything like that. And then we'll get into his story. ¿De dónde vienes, carnal? Para esos que no sepan que están nuevos en el canal, X que no han visto los videos. Vengo de Fuerte, Sinaloa. So he's from Fuerte, Sinaloa, you guys. It's not too far from here. And it's a beautiful place. I've actually been there with him and talk to his people and stuff. It's nice. There's a lot of rivers, there's a lot of water. So, ¿cómo empezaste en esa vida? I asked him how he started in his life.
Muy chamaco, no fui muy tremendo, como todo, ¿no? Ya saben, ¿no? Y pues, la verdad, muy tremendo, ya sabe, pues, ¿no? Entonces, pues, poco a poco, pues, vendiendo droga y...
Esa fue la primera cosa.
Sí.
So he said he really got into it. He said he was a troublemaker, is basically what he was saying there. When he was a kid, tremendo, you know, when we say that here, it usually mean like tremendous, but it doesn't mean like a good thing. It usually can mean like when you break stuff, you know, just so you guys understand. And like he started in that life with drugs. That was his first thing, was selling narcotics. And that's get my. And I can say the same thing for me. You know, that was really where I got into criminal life. And as a young kid, I used to do it to survive. I'm asking him. Yo lo hice la misma poco con él, tengo 13 años, pero para sobrevivir. Cuando no viví con mi mamá y estaba en la calle, y esa fue mi fuente de ingreso para comer.
Sí,
¿A usted es la misma? ¿Usted quiere saber?
igual, lo mismo, así lo mismo, seguir eso, para sobrevivir mi familia, madre darle dinero, mis hermanos,
He said his dad wasn't around, you know, at that age, and he was the man of the house, basically. And to be able to give food to his mom, to his sisters, to everybody, so everybody could eat, he made sure that he had to put food on the table. You know, he made sure it was always there. So that's where the drug selling came into his life, because, you know, he had to put food on the table. I'm going to ask him what kind, and some other, we're going to get into it. ¿Y qué tipo de droga fue que andabas vendiendo? La primera, para arrancar.
Para arrancar, la primera droga que vendí pues, fue marihuana y cocaína.
Vaya, sin bien, hecho.
Cocaína, vendiendo, y pues anduve, ya saben, por las calles y principalmente para ayudar a mi madre, ¿no?
Sí, es.
Número uno.
Qué bueno, por usted, mi respeto. So, I gave him respect because he said mom's number one, you know, but he was saying he started with weed and dope, and with weed and blow, and he went on progressing from there. Which is crazy, you know. It sounds like almost like my story, except for the being home part. You know, I was already out of the home, and I was only taking care of myself. So my respect to him, he had to take care of a bunch of people, not just himself. Probably had it harder than me, if you want the truth, even if he had a roof over his head. So, aparte que las drogas, ¿qué otra cosa? I'm asking what other crimes did he start to get into, you know, because I know it progressed with him.
Pues antes de todo eso, compañero, antes de todo eso, pues también pasé por lo malo y por todo, y sinceramente también limpié vidrio, vendiendo chocolates y que paletas y así me la llevaba.
Pero no rinde la misma, ¿no?
Principalmente antes.
No rinde como la droga, ¿no?
No, pues no, claro que no. Pues
He said,
me tuve que meter a droga.
He said that he wanted you guys to know too, so you don't think he just went right to drugs. He was selling chocolates in the street, cleaning car windows, like at the stoplights, like cars will stop, and people here during the stoplight, they'll come up and clean your window, you know, or when your car's parked. There's some parts of the United States, I know people do that too, but not so much as here. ¿Y qué otro tipo de crimen te metiste, carnal, después de se poner el hobby? Como a mí, no fue mucho el robo, así decir, pero sí metieron muchas otras cosas. No sé con usted qué fue.
Pues también, sinceramente, fueron robos,
pero los robos como de persona o más de casa.
No, comercio,
Comercio
fueron lo que más le pegué, la verdad, sinceramente, a comercio.
He said sincerely, so you guys can know, this is probably the first time he's admitted it, as we were talking about before. It was mostly robbing businesses, small businesses, you know, armed robbery, small businesses, like, for example, not so much like 7-Elevens, like what you think, but here, but we have like tiendas and stuff like that, as well as small stores. Como las tiendas, así, o X.
Tiendas grandes, sí.
Sí. I said bigger stores too, you know, where they'd have actual real money. Just smart, because if you're gonna, que vale la pena, if you're gonna get charged for robbery, you might as well make it worth your time. So it might as well be a big robbery, right? Because you're gonna get the same charge. So definitely not promoting crime, but if you think about it, if you're gonna go to jail for 10 years, risk jail for 10 years, excuse me, why would you risk on $50 we get 50,000? If that makes sense. You know, same charge, you can go to jail the same amount of time. That's how it is here. Where you live, that might be different, but where we live, that's how it is. Now, ¿a qué edad saliste de la casa, carnal, usted? Que ya estabas.
A los 11 años. 11 años,
saliendo de la casa, viviendo en la calle, se sigue a tocar.
Vendiendo periódico, limpiando vidrio, chucho. Yeah, this was dulce, paleta.
At 11 years, he started going into the streets and leaving his home to sell. So from 11 years on, he was working. Okay, so there's about a 2-year gap in between him doing legal work and him getting into illegal types of things. That's what I want to know, how long, before the progression came. Because you don't make the same type of money, guys. Please don't judge him, because it's a lot less money you can make cleaning windows and stuff. It doesn't even compare. And when you got food, mouths to, feed, fill, there's just some responsibility on your shoulders right there.
Yeah, so, homie figured out that working a legal 9 to 5 wasn't as lucrative as doing crime, which, not going to excuse or condone what he did or does, but, when you got a family, you can't always prioritize the law and shit. Sometimes you just got to hustle, make that money. And that's, it ain't just like that in Mexico. There's plenty of, fools out in Cali, and they're in the game, and it ain't all about clout for them. They ain't having fun. A lot of them got mouths to feed too. So that's why having social safety nets and welfare programs, not even that so much, just having a decent minimum wage that's a living wage. Those things are all really important. Because at the end of the day, if people don't have enough to live off of, working a job, they're going to get creative, and that usually ends up, usually manifest as a life of crime. So the story is old as time, man, but that's just the life.
Y, uy, compa, sí, qué loco lo vieron, ¿no? Estoy pensando a mí también. Y cuando sí es eso con la mafia, me imagino, ¿no? Si es eso por tu propio cuenta.
No, por mí mismo, ¿no?
Chapulineando, por favor.
Por mí mismo, y pues la verdad, sinceramente, más adelante, como tuve que
Con la mafia,
sí, me
ya.
tuve que meter
Claro que sí.
contra la mafia,
Sí es.
que no caga de otra. No, porque ya sabes, si no te metes, pues no.
Te
Ya
metes,
empiezo.
So,
Realmente, no.
I asked them about when he first started, if he was working with the mafia, or how he was doing it, what was going on. And he said he was chapulineando at first, which is like he was selling for himself. But then he had to get into line with the mafia, excuse me, and line up with them. Now, once you line up with them, that's for life, they know you, whatever, but you have to. Usually they'll come to you and be like, hey, you're going to buy our product and do our sales, whatever, with our, profit margins, or you're not going to do anything. At least if you want to breathe air. They don't really leave you a lot of options. So that's how a lot of people get involved with the mafia, and they get brought into it. They start selling for themselves or something. I don't think everyone wants to get in the mafia and does that. Lots of people doing stuff for themselves, for families, whatever, and they get the mafia's attention, and then it's forced. It's not optional. There's no option involved there. So you don't judge them on that either. It's here we said plato plomo, which is take our silver, or make money with this, whatever, how it applies financially, or take our letters and the bullets. And it's the truth. That's how it's structured around here, and that's how they do it. I want to do this into several parts. I want to get this into the first part, like it's the introduction to his life. So you guys can leave more questions down below. I want to do this as an opener, and then let your guys' questions direct the rest of this to where it goes. So you guys have any specific questions for him, or questions on growing up in that life, or if you grew up or were around things like that and want to leave a comment below, let me know. Email ogshoutoutofficial@gmail.com. Right down below, leave any questions you got, and that's where it's going to direct this. And I already have a bunch of questions myself. By the time you guys have probably seen it, I've probably already done it, but this is your guys' channel at the end of the day. It's our channel. So I like to include you guys in that. And, I might this time actually note down questions, which if you guys want, I'll put in your guys' username. If not, tell me not to, whatever. But if they're really good questions, I might put them in there and say, this is so-and-so asked this, good question. Ya, eso va a ser la primera parte, como introducción. Y que abajo en los comentarios que pueden dejar las preguntas para usted para los siguientes videos. Eso va a direccionar donde va haciéndole. Entonces, si quieres decir adiós a la gente, ahí vamos a
Luego, pues estamos, ¿no? Vamos a este video.
There we go, guys. I'm gonna end this here. I'm probably gonna film at the new house today for the first time. So, not probably, I'm going to. So, we'll see those videos. You guys will see those videos too in the next couple of days. Monetization willing. So, have a good one. Much love, much respect. Aloha.
Yeah, so that was OG Shadow and Mr. Blue. I know OG Shadow, he was in the Sinaloa area, but he had to move because he said it got real dangerous up there. And I know he's got people from Sinaloa that's got his back and shit, but there's a lot of people who they don't like what he does. And what OG Shadow does is he kind of exposes the crimes of, you know, the cartels, and not just the cartels, the military too, when they fuck up and they do something shady. So OG Shadow is on it. But something's come up, guys. I kind of have to wrap it up right here. But this has been a good stream, man. I like hanging out with everybody. And I don't know, I might go on later, probably like a video game stream or something. And we might watch some funny ass videos and see how long that goes until YouTube gives me like a copyright strike and shuts that down. But I appreciate everybody, you know, whoever's still here. Had a lot of fun. I'll wait till the delay catches up. I think there's like a 5 or 10 second delay there. But yep, I appreciate it. You guys stay safe. And thanks for the video recommendations. All right, peace out, Tony. Propaganda Karen, Anthony, whoever's there. And I'll catch you cool cats later. Alright, whoopsies.